Chapter 298. Ha! The next day, Noah, who was sitting in his seat in the classroom, was still the same as yesterday. He gave a big yawn. His face didn't show any signs of fatigue, but it was unusually lazy. However, after he finished yawning, Noah opened his eyes and was shocked by the scene in front of him. A group of 2A students, led by Torimaru, were gathered in front of Noah. Their faces were very serious, as if they were discussing the upcoming end of the world. Their bodies were emitting a strong pressure. Noah admitted that he, who was not afraid of anything, was now scared by a group of ordinary students. Because they were too stupid, Noah was worried that he might be infected. Sigh. Noah sighed and narrowed his eyes. I'll give you 3 seconds to clearly state your intentions. 1, 2. How was it yesterday? Torimaru seemed to represent the voice of the entire 2A. He couldn't wait to ask. Did you really go on a date with Ouchie? Torimaru, I found that your brain has become stupid. Noah said snappily. Please think about it carefully. Would the Ouchie in your heart really invite me on a date? This sentence, as if it was the truth, shook the hearts of all the students present. That's right, that's right. That's the student council president. The student council president who would even say, aren't you guys hot? When he sees those couples stuck together in school, how could he be interested in love? That's right. You're right. Torimaru scratched his head. His voice returned to its usual rough and powerful tone. Then why did Ouchie ask you to go out yesterday? Pulling weeds. Noah answered truthfully. What did you say? Torimaru was stunned. Pulling weeds. Noah repeated expressionlessly. In this world, there is a very tenacious life form called grass. Although strictly speaking, they are not harmful. Once their numbers increase, they will evolve into weeds. At this time, people have to pull them out. This action is called weeding. I'm not asking you what pulling weeds is. Itamaru couldn't help but slam the table and stand up, shouting at Noah. You don't think I'm stupid, do you? Noah's gaze suddenly became very inconceivable, as if he was saying, isn't that so? Which hurt Itamaru's heart. I'm the vice president of the student council. Itamaru couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed Noah's neck and shook him. Noah, tell me. Say I'm not an idiot. If you continue to choke me, even if you're not an idiot, you'll become a murderer. Noah's weak voice entered Itamaru's ears, which made him even more agitated. Actually, with Itamaru's strength, let alone choke Noah to death, he couldn't even make Noah have difficulty breathing. However, Noah didn't hate this kind of interaction with his classmates. It made him feel very relaxed. Only at this time, Noah would forget that he had the strength to casually choke anyone around him to death. He would enjoy peace as an ordinary person. Even if this peace only lasted for a moment. Bang! At a certain moment, the door of the 2A classroom was pushed open, making a loud sound. Her handsome figure swayed with her black hair. She ignored the surrounding students who had shut their mouths and fled in panic. Her gaze swept in Noah's direction. She looked at Noah, whose neck was being choked by Itamaru, and walked over. The person who came was naturally Aoko Aozaki. Seeing Aoko Aozaki walking in his direction without hesitation, Noah put away the lazy expression on his face and became a bit cynical. As for Itamaru, it was as if he was scared silly and forgot to move. After a while, he woke up and quickly retracted his hand from Noah's neck. He acted as if nothing had happened and dodged to the side. In the classroom, only Aoko Aozaki's unusually loud footsteps could be heard. Not long after, it disappeared into the air. Just like yesterday, Aoko Aozaki stood in front of Noah's seat and looked down at him. Her eyes were still fierce, but there was a trace of intense emotions that only Noah could see. After all, yesterday was different from today. Yesterday, Aoko Aozaki came to see a classmate. Today, Aoko Aozaki came to see an enemy. No, a classmate. Aoko Aozaki said straightforwardly. Do you have time after school? Even the opening words were the same as yesterday. However, no one noticed that there was an unknown change. Under the admiring and curious gazes of the students led by Itamaru, Noah smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Does the student union president want to invite me on a date? Still, it was exactly the same. But this time, Aoko Aozaki's response was like a big bad wolf trying to lure a rabbit to open the door. It was cunning and evil. It's not just me. Even my roommate wants to have a memorable date with you. When this was said, the classroom was dead silent. What did this mean? Buy one get one free. Speaking of which, was this really a date? The students looked at Noah, as if they were worshipping a god. As expected, transfer students were all legends. Only Noah understood the meaning behind Ayako Aozaki's words. It seemed that Ayako Aozaki and Yuju had either found a way to deal with Avalon, or they were planning to negotiate with Noah. As for Avalon, as the strongest guardian in the world, it was hard to say whether there was a way to deal with it, let alone finding a way to deal with it. Therefore, compared to the former, Noah felt that the latter was more likely. I can't go on a date with two beautiful girls at the same time. Although he said this, Noah's face became a half-smile. I hope the president and Miss Yuju will have mercy on me. Ayako Aozaki glared at Noah, turned her head, swung her waist-length hair, and walked out of the classroom without looking back. After school, stay in the classroom and wait for me. After saying this, Ayako Aozaki disappeared from the classroom door. Wow! Almost at the same time, all the students of 2A swarmed over and surrounded Noah. They started chattering, almost squeezing Uemaru out of the crowd. Uemaru was so angry that the veins on his forehead were about to explode. In the crowd, Noah glanced at the direction Ayako Aozaki left in. Ignoring the chattering idiots around him, he tried to figure out what Ayako Aozaki and Yuju were thinking. Just like the day before, Noah and Ayako walked on the ramp leading to the white dog tomb in the manor house. It seemed like they would never finish walking on top of the hill. However, it was different from yesterday. This time, Noah and Ayako Aozaki did not exchange a single word. They walked up the ramp in silence and arrived in front of the old iron fence. Screech! The iron fence was pushed open with a whining sound. Noah and Ayako Aozaki walked into the courtyard and slowly walked along the tree-lined path in front of the manor house. It was only then that Ayako Aozaki coldly spoke. Let me make it clear. That manor house was left to Yuju by her father. Yuju treasures that manor house very much. I only got the right to stay there temporarily. Yuju has always hated people entering her manor. Therefore, you have to be prepared for Yuju's mood to change. Hearing this, Noah calmly replied, It's okay. If that's the case, my mood might change at any time. When the time comes, I will leave on my own. Then Yuju and I will be in a better mood, right? Ayako Aozaki's eyes twitched slightly as she sighed in her heart. That's true. This time, the one who had the initiative was not someone else, but this transfer student who had no way to deal with. No matter how the conversation developed, Noah, who was in an undefeatable position, was the stronger party. The ones who should compromise were Ayako Aozaki and Yuju, not Noah. If Noah really left at that time, Ayoko's mood would definitely be very bad, regardless of whether Yuju's mood would be good or not. Ayako Aozaki could only hope that Yuju could control herself. However, what happened next gave Ayako Aozaki a headache. In front of the manor house, a dark-skinned girl was holding a book and reading it expressionlessly. If it wasn't Yuju, who else could it be? Does Yuju want to talk outside the manor house? Ayako Aozaki felt her head start to hurt. Chapter 299. The sunset glow shone down from the sky like a beautiful gauze dress draped over the girl's body. The dark girl stood in front of the main entrance of the mansion, like a tourist waiting for the arrival of the train. She lowered her head and quietly looked at the book in her hand. At first glance, she looked like a statue. If it weren't for the girl moving her fingers from time to flip through the book in her hand, no one would be able to sense the slightest sign of life from her body, and would mistake her for a real puppet or statue. Not to mention Noah, who was a man. Even Ayako, who was a woman, was dazed for a moment, and was almost attracted by the girl's fatal beauty. Even Noah's gaze was taken away, and involuntarily fixed on the girl's body. However, this quiet beauty didn't last long. As if she felt Noah's gaze, Yuju slightly raised her head without the slightest warning. Her black eyes suddenly met with Noah's equally dark pupils. The man and woman's eyes were both darker than the night. However, one was as dark as the stars, while the other was as intoxicating as the moonlight. At this moment, It seemed that only the man and woman were left in the whole world, causing the air to be filled with a sense of oppressive silence. Although they had only met twice, and both times were in the form of battle or confrontation, it wasn't difficult for Noah to see that Yuju was a girl of few words. Therefore, needless to say, it wasn't that Yuju didn't know what to say, but that she had long been accustomed to silence, and didn't feel the slightest bit uncomfortable with silence. Thus, if no one spoke first, Yuju would definitely remain silent until all the time was wasted, right? As for Noah, he was simply patient. Seeing that Yuju didn't intend to express anything, he was too lazy to say anything and didn't feel too awkward. However, Noah and Yuju didn't care about being silent, but it didn't mean that Ayoko didn't care. As you can see, Yuju, I've brought her. Without the slightest hesitation, Ayoko broke the strange silence in a swift and decisive manner. She looked at Yuju with undisguised sharpness in her pale eyes. Shouldn't we go in now? Or do you plan to talk here? Ayoko Aozaki's voice was filled with reproach. Don't think that Ayoko and Yuju lived together because of their good relationship. In fact, the two of them lived together because they had the same interests. The spiritual vein in Sano City has always belonged to the Aozaki family. Of course, in Ayoko's generation, the spirit vein in Sano City naturally became the property of Ayoko. As mentioned before, there were 3 ways for a magician to obtain the power of a spirit vein. Apply for a loan from the Magic Association. Coordinate with the owner of the spirit vein. Snatching a ready-made spirit vein. Yuju had stayed in Sanyo City through the second route, sharing the spirit vein of Sanyo City with Ayoko Aozaki. Only Aozaki Ayoko and Yuju Aozaki knew exactly how they coordinated their relationship, and what kind of twists and turns there were in between. However, it was certain that the two of them didn't live together, because they had a good relationship. Magicians were a group of existences without any moral values in the world. As long as there was enough reason, they wouldn't hesitate to kill even biological sisters. Now, as the manager of the spirit vein in Sano City, Aozaki Ayoko and Yuju Aozaki had to negotiate with Noah, who they couldn't do anything about but couldn't ignore. Otherwise, neither of them would feel at ease. If Yuju Aozaki Ayoko really rejected the person she had to deal with because of her personal feelings, causing the matter to reach a deadlock, then Aozaki Ayoko would have enough reason to make things difficult for her cohabitant. Even if this cohabitant was Aozaki Ayoko's friend and a magic instructor, Aozaki Ayoko's power was nothing to Yuju Aozaki Ayoko. Therefore, this time, it was Aozaki Ayoko and Yuju Aozaki Ayoko's turn to look at each other, falling into an indescribable silence. Yuju fearlessly responded to Ayoko's piercing gaze, her expression not changing in the slightest. After a while, Yuju Aozaki Ayoko turned her head and looked at Noah, who didn't say anything. After a long time, she finally turned around and pushed open the door of the mansion. From the beginning to the end, Yuju Aozaki Ayoko didn't say a single word. However, the moment Yuju Aozaki Ayoko turned around, both Noah and Aozaki Ayoko could feel the unfriendly aura emanating from Yuju Aozaki Ayoko. Obviously, Yuju Aozaki Ayoko was really unhappy about letting Noah enter the mansion. This also meant that Aozaki Ayoko was right. Yuju Aozaki Ayoko really treasured this mansion. Sigh. Aozaki Ayoko sighed tiredly. Her attitude towards Noah had become more or less impatient. Let's go. We'll talk after I've dealt with you. What do you mean by we'll talk after I've dealt with you? Noah rolled his eyes and didn't bother to pay attention to Aozaki Ayoko. He walked forward and entered the mansion on his own. As soon as he entered the mansion, Noah felt a sense of dissonance that was completely different from the outside. In every corner of the manor house, there was a trace of magical aura permeating the air. It was the magical aura that came from the earth spirit vein in Sanyo City. It wasn't until he sensed that even the air was filled with magical aura that Noah was able to clearly see the interior of the mansion. What entered his eyes was the main hall of the mansion. It was a very classical manor house. The floor was made of wooden bricks. Instead of saying that the walls were white, it was more accurate to say that they were gray. Almost none of the furniture around him had a modern appearance. They were either wooden tables and chairs or ancient clocks. There wasn't even a single fluorescent lamp. It felt like they had entered another world. The ceiling reached all the way to the top. Not only was half of it occupied by a huge glass window, but it was also higher than the second floor. The sunlight shone in from the outside, and at least it didn't make people feel cold. Yuzu Aozaki Aoko didn't wait for Noah and Aozaki Aoko to enter. She opened the door on the left side of the hall, and let Noah see a corridor that was as dark as a basement. Yuzu Aozaki Aoko walked into the corridor, and directly opened the door closest to her, and entered. It was a living room with luxurious sofas and carpets, but it also had a very out-of-place TV, which made Noah feel out of place in another way. Aozaki Aoko ignored Noah's strange expression, and walked in slowly, and sat next to Yuzu, who was already sitting on the sofa. Originally, it's rare to have guests here, so I should make you a cup of tea, but because I don't know if the meeting will end well or not, I don't want to do that kind of meaningless thing. Aozaki Aoko's expression changed into a serious one. Although it's a bit late to say this, can we talk? Noah curled his lips, and walked into the living room. He sat opposite Aozaki Aoko, and Yuzu Aozaki, and looked into the eyes of the two girls. I know what you want to talk about. Then you should also know how troublesome your existence is for us. Aozaki Aoko stared at Noah while Yuzu remained silent. Say it, what do you want? When she said this, Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu were destined to fall into a passive situation. However, there was no other way. This time they were really passive. Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki did not have the means to deal with Noah. If Noah really coveted Sanayo City's spiritual vein, he could ignore Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki. Anyway, with the protection of Avalon, Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki could not touch a single hair on Noah's head. In this way, Noah could directly tamper with, or even directly destroy the barrier of Sanayo City, and build a new one of his own. Then, the ownership of Sanayo City's spiritual vein would be transferred to Noah's hands, and no longer belong to Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki. There was no way to deal with it. There was no way to just watch. Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki could only choose to negotiate with Noah. Noah naturally understood this. However, Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki made a mistake. I don't know if you will choose to believe me, but I'll make it clear to you. Under the gazes of the two girls, Noah said with a smile. Who told you that I'm here to seize Sanayo City's spiritual vein? Aozaki Aoko and Yuzu Aozaki were stunned. Chapter 300. What do you mean by that? Aoko loosened her arms and stared at Noah, as if she was trying to find a flaw in Noah's expression. You're not here for the spirit vein? If you're not here for the spirit vein, what are you doing in Sanayo City? Are you trying to tell me that you're here to experience the life of a high school student? Aoko said this in a mocking tone, but there was an indescribable seriousness in her expression. Although Yuzu was still expressionless, her brows were slightly furrowed. Aoko and Yuzu weren't ordinary people. Even without their identity as magicians, they believed that no one would underestimate them. And now, their instincts were telling them that they had walked into a huge misunderstanding from the beginning. Therefore, Aoko and Yuzu wanted to see something from Noah's expression, but Noah's calm expression only brought them disappointment. Therefore, Noah only used one sentence to block all of Aoko and Yuzu's guesses. Do you think I have a need to lie? Aoko and Yuzu instantly exchanged glances. That's right. Noah had no need to lie. This was because even if Noah frankly expressed that he wanted to obtain the spirit vein in Sanayo City, Aoko and Yuzu couldn't do anything about it. In that case, did Noah have a need to lie? President, do you remember what I said when we first met in the student union office? Noah looked at Aoko with a spurious smile. I said that I came to Sanayo City by chance. Aoko subconsciously wanted to refute, but she couldn't find a reason or evidence to refute. Aoko gritted her teeth. Since you're not here for the spirit vein, you should leave Sanayo City. This is our territory. Strictly speaking, Aoko didn't own Sanayo City, but the spirit vein in Sanayo City. Naturally, Aoko didn't have the right to chase away outsiders. But that was only limited to ordinary people. If the person who came to Sano City was an ordinary person, then Aoko wouldn't be able to control him. However, if the person who came was a magician, then it was different. As the manager of Sanyo City's spiritual vein, foreign magicians couldn't stay in Sanyo City unless they reached an agreement with Ayoko. Even if foreign magicians did not use the spiritual veins in Sanyo City, it would still be the same. In response, Noah directly retorted with a single sentence. Since that's the case, please exercise your authority as the manager of the spirit vein and chase me out. How about that? Ayoko Aozaki was furious. Drive him out. If she had the ability to drive Noah out, then with Aoko's character, she would not have talked so much nonsense with Noah. Aren't you worried that I will secretly do something to the spirit vein and boundary of Sanyi City? That's why you have no choice but to come and negotiate with me, right? Noah had a funny expression on his face as he shrugged. I've already told you that I have no interest in the spirit vein in Sanyi City. You don't have to worry anymore, right? Don't have to worry? Who wouldn't be worried? Not to mention whether it was true or not. Even if it was true, who would be at ease to let a magician that they couldn't control stay in their territory? Who could guarantee that this magician did not have any other motives? Who could guarantee that this magician would not suddenly launch an attack from behind at the crucial moment and kill him? After all, to put it nicely, magicians were a group of mystical scholars. But to put it bluntly, they were just a group of lunatics who would do anything to achieve their goals. That is, to reach the source of their power. Allowing a magician with unknown intentions to wander around his territory? At least Ayoko and Yuju, who couldn't accept people's kindness, couldn't do that. Why do you have to stay in Sanyo City? Ayoko went straight to the point. Do you have a reason for staying here? Hearing this, Noah fell silent. In fact, even Noah himself did not know why he had to stay in Sanyo City. However, in Noah's heart, Noah had never considered leaving Sanyo City. Why was it like this? After asking himself, Noah gave such an answer. I only have one reason to stay here. Ayoko and Yuju stood up solemnly at the same time. However, in the next moment, Noah's answer almost made the bad-tempered Ayoko fly into a rage. Intuition. Noah suddenly smiled. Intuition tells me that I have to stay here. Only by staying here can I get what I want. Ayoko's forehead suddenly had the word well printed on it, causing her to put on a fake smile. Noah, are you playing with me? I'm very serious. Noah leaned his body on the sofa and said leisurely. It depends on whether you believe it or not. In the living room, silence filled the air. Ayoko's expression had already become somewhat uncertain. She obviously did not expect things to develop into such a difficult problem. After a while, she gave up and looked at Yuju. Yuju, what should we do now? Yuju was still silent. After a while, she stood up and walked out of the living room. Ayoko understood and said to Noah, wait for us here. After saying that, Ayoko followed Yuju out of the living room. Not long after, a faint discussion could be heard from outside. It seems that in order to solve Noah's problem, Ayoko and Yuju had already started a strategy meeting. In this case, Noah had no reason to be anxious. He sat there with a clear conscience and observed the surroundings. What made Noah puzzled was that for some reason, the discussion between Ayoko and Yuju seemed to have turned into a dispute. Moreover, the quarrel was quite fierce. Even the voice of the taciturn Yuju could be heard faintly. The dispute was very fierce. In the end, it was unknown if the dispute had reached a conclusion. But the voice disappeared little by little. Then, footsteps began to sound, approaching the living room. When Ayoko and Yuju appeared in front of Noah again, the expression of the two girls was completely different. Ayoko had a satisfied expression on her face. Yuju was expressionless as usual, but her empty eyes were fixed on Noah the moment she entered the living room. To Noah's surprise, there was obvious emotion in Yuju's eyes. Dissatisfaction. Yuju was very dissatisfied. We agreed to let you stay in Mayo City, but we also have our conditions. Ayoko opened the following negotiation with such a sentence. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. We also know that we don't have the qualifications to make conditions with you now. But after all, you are living in our territory. We will treat you as a foreign magician who wants to rent a spiritual vein from us. Ayoko gave Noah an unusually sweet smile. Or is Noah the kind of evil guest who will occupy other people's residence and not pay rent? Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows. Since you have said so, fine, let's hear it. Our conditions are very simple. Ayoko's smile became more and more sweet, but also more and more dangerous. Noah, classmate, we hope to know your whereabouts and always know. Otherwise, we won't be able to feel at ease. Oh. Noah slightly narrowed his eyes. You mean you want to spy on me? No. Ayoko straightforwardly shook her head, but her answer made Noah stunned. We want you to live here. What did you say? Noah was stunned. Live here? That's right. Ayoko nodded heavily. Only when you are under our eyes can we feel at ease. Noah finally understood why Yuju was so dissatisfied. This was Yuju's most precious manor. Now that it was invaded by an outsider, of course Yuju would be dissatisfied. If it wasn't for the fact that Noah's problem couldn't be ignored, Yuju wouldn't have agreed to this proposal. And this time, it was Noah's turn to be hesitant. Live with Ayoko and Yuju. Ayoko didn't seem to care about the problem of the opposite sex living under the same roof, as she crossed her arms. This is our bottom line. Hearing this, Noah understood. For Ayoko and Yuju, he was not a man, but a magician. Chapter 301. This is your room. Ayoko opened a door that was covered in a thin layer of dust. It seemed like it had not been cleaned for a while. Ayoko moved aside slightly to let Noah enter Noah's line of sight. Noah replaced Ayoko and came to the door. He had a panoramic view of the world behind the door. It was a very ordinary but somewhat strange room. Ordinary referred to the size and scale of the room. In terms of size and scale, it was no different from a normal room. Strange referred to the furniture. There was only one bed in the room, and it was a rather high-end mahogany bed. Putting such a high-end bed in an ordinary room, there was indeed an indescribable sense of strangeness. However, there were many rooms like this in the manor house. Yuju's manor house was very large. In terms of scale, it was larger than a normal villa. Naturally, there were many empty rooms. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed a bit wasteful for two single girls to live in such a large manor house. After all, even the rich children who could afford to live in such a large manor house would have maids and servants who specialized in cleaning their houses. However, in this manor house, there was no third person other than Ayoko and Yuju. Of course, it was a bit wasteful to live in it. However, from today onwards, Noah would also be a resident of this manor house. If you're not satisfied, don't complain. The empty rooms in the manor are all similar. Some of them are even used by Yuju and me as storage rooms and study rooms. Ayoko brushed her waist-length hair and turned a blind eye as she spoke to Noah in an indifferent tone. By the way, this room is in the East Manor. My room is also in the East Manor, but it's on the other side. The West Manor is Yuju's territory. Even I can't enter without permission. You can't go there either. Otherwise, even if she knows that she can't do anything to you, Yuju will fight you to the death. By the way, do you want to go back to your original room and get your luggage? Perhaps because she felt that Noah's room was a bit desolate, Ayoko seemed to kindly suggest this. However, this suggestion only earned Noah's annoyance. There's no need for that. I've only been in Sanyi City for the past 2 to 3 days. The things that I originally had in my residence were all provided in my apartment. Is that so? Ayoko asked doubtfully. Don't we need to bring clothes and daily necessities? I do need to go back and get the clothes, but there are only a few of them. It's not a big deal. Noah walked into the room and sat on the bed. Feeling the softness of the high-end bed, he nodded with satisfaction. As for the daily necessities, I'll buy new ones tomorrow. Well, it's up to you. Ayoko answered casually. But don't buy anything that you can't fit in your room. Otherwise, Yuju will definitely explode. So many restrictions. Are you looking for a cohabitant or a prisoner? Noah raised his head, his eyes full of hostility. Since you're so displeased with me, why do you want me to stay here? You're going all out and going all out. Do you think we want to? It's just that this is the best plan for now. Ayoko's voice sounded a little helpless. Moreover, Yuju didn't agree to let you stay here. Even if you have to compromise, she must be very unhappy now. Maybe she's hiding somewhere, and preparing to attack you. Attack me? Noah was a little stunned. Don't be fooled by Yuju. She's actually very childish. Not only does she get angry easily, but she's also easily controlled by personal feelings. Ayoko glanced at Noah. I've agreed to let you stay here because it's necessary. It's not that easy to get Yoju's approval. Why do I have to work so hard to get her to acknowledge me? Noah's voice didn't sound depressed at all. It was as if Yoju's mood had nothing to do with him. You're the one who asked me to stay here. I'm only cooperating with you to avoid trouble. If living here will cause a lot of trouble, then I'm sorry, but I won't stay here. I think so too. Ayoko Aoyagi showed a troubled expression, and her eyes were filled with hatred. I'm already so busy because of those foreign magicians, and now I have to worry about my 2 roommates. I must have been cursed. Hearing this, Noah became curious. Are there foreign magicians in Sanayo City? Noah had some guesses about the 2 men who attacked Yuju that night. He felt that it was very likely that they were foreign magicians who wanted to seize Sanayo City's spiritual vein. Now it seemed that it wasn't just the 2 men from that night. There were obviously other foreign magicians in Sanayo City. Otherwise, who was the automaton that attacked Noah last night and was kicked away by Noah? The owner of the automaton was the one who wanted to seize Sanayo City's spiritual vein and challenge Ayoko and Yuju. Ayoko subconsciously wanted to answer Noah's question. But when she remembered that Noah was also in the observation period, she immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and changed it to such a sentence. They're just magicians from all walks of life. We'll get rid of them very soon. After saying that, Ayoko turned around and walked away without looking back. Dinner is after 8 o'clock. Just go straight to the living room. Also, don't go to the West Wing. There's already enough trouble. Don't add to it. After saying this, Ayoko's figure disappeared from Noah's sight, accompanied by the sound of footsteps gradually fading away. Noah curled his lips and lay down on the bed. He closed his eyes and took a nap. On the other side, Ayoko walked down the stairs and came to the hall on the first floor. She saw Yuju standing in front of the door to the West Wing, motionless like a real puppet. Perhaps she was in a daze. The hall on the first floor was through the front entrance of the mansion. In the hall on the first floor of the mansion, there were roughly 4 doors and a staircase. The door on the east side led to the living room. The door on the west side led to the West Wing where Yuju was. The door on the south side was the front entrance. There was a heater on the north side, and next to the heater was the stairs to the second floor. The last door was behind the stairs, which was the door to the bathroom. At this time, Yuju was standing in front of the door to the West Wing. Ayoko looked at Yuju, who was standing there motionlessly. Ayoko walked down the stairs with powerful steps and spoke unintentionally. His room has been arranged. It's at the end of the corridor on the second floor. As if she didn't hear Ayoko's words, Yuju still didn't move at all. She looked straight ahead, as if she didn't want to know about Noah at all. However, Ayoko, who had been with Yuju for about 2 years, smiled meaningfully and said this sentence in a teasing manner. The idea of letting him stay. At first I was just saying it casually, Yuju. Yoju's empty eyes flickered for a moment. Although keeping him right under our noses can prevent him from doing anything that we can't see, it's still very risky. After all, we're basically burying a bomb that could explode at any time right next to us, Ayoko Aozaki said. Plus, this manor house has a special meaning to you, Yuju. Originally, I thought this proposal would be rejected, but I didn't expect you to suddenly agree after protesting for a while. Can you tell me why? Yes, I agree. In fact, Yuju had already agreed to let Noah live in this mansion. Although she wasn't completely dissatisfied, she wasn't forced to do so, as Ayoko said. At least, from Ayoko's point of view, with Yoju's dedication to this mansion, there was no way she would agree to let an outsider live here, just because it was necessary. Therefore, how could Ayoko not be curious about Yoju's thoughts? Yuju didn't pay attention to Ayoko. Ayoko didn't know that at this very moment, the events of that night were slowly replaying in Yoju's mind. The battle with Noah, who hid his identity, the attack from the man with the fissure, and the moment when Noah stepped forward and saved Yuju. Chapter 302. In the living room of the manor house, There was a door that led to the outside. Behind the door was a sunroom. Both sides of the walls were covered by glass, and the ceiling was also made of glass. It was like an open-air cafe. Not only were there classical and elegant tables and chairs, but one could also see the courtyard outside the manor house through the glass. It was a pity that before this, only 2 single girls had lived in the manor house. Furthermore, both of them lacked the awareness to clean up. Therefore, now the courtyard outside was filled with withered trees. It was as depressing as a wasteland. If Noah hadn't come here to pull the weeds yesterday, it would have been even more unsightly. What was even more disappointing was that the sunroom was also the manor house's dining room. Noah aside, Ayoko and Yuju had always used the sunroom as a place to eat. When Noah found out about this, he was quite speechless. I can't believe you can eat so happily while looking at that wasteland outside. Sitting at the table that served as a dining table in the sunroom, Noah sighed at Ayoko Aozaki and Yuju Aozaki, who shared the same table on the other side. It was such a good courtyard, but you wasted it just like that. Don't look at me. It was already like this when I moved in. Ayoko didn't hesitate to draw the line. Don't look at Yuju either. It's more difficult for Yuju to repair the courtyard than for her to date. Yuju drank her soup in silence. It was obvious that she didn't care about Ayoko's words, nor did she care that the courtyard had become a wasteland. Although she loved the manor house very much, Yuju didn't look like an extremely diligent girl. If she had the time to do these things, he believed that Yuju would be more willing to spend it on magic research. Ayoko was even more so. She had to go through a lot of trouble to find Noah to pull the weeds. It was impossible for her to do it herself. In other words, neither of you are good at dating, and you both think that it doesn't matter? Noah looked sympathetically at the 2 girls who would be living together from that day onwards. What a pity. If it were any other girl who heard this, they would definitely fly into a rage. However, in the ears of Ayoko and Yuju, it didn't even have the slightest bit of meaning. The 2 of them minded their own business and ate their own food, causing Noah to be snubbed. By the way, the dining rules in the mansion were different from those in other places. Under normal circumstances, they worked in shifts. However, if someone was in a bad mood or had something to do, they could choose not to work and let the other residents in the manor do their own things. It was that casual. It was the same this time. Yuju, who came to the living room first, cooked for herself. Ayoko Aochi, who came later, cooked for herself. By the time Noah arrived, the 2 had already started eating. They mercilessly told Noah to cook for himself. At this time, Ayoko suddenly said to Yuju, "Yuju, let's continue with yesterday's homework after dinner." Hearing this, Yuju finally reacted. She raised her head and nodded at Aochi Ayoko. Her quiet voice resounded in the sunlight room. "Yesterday, we were practicing the suggestion magic. According to the original plan, we were going to do another topic today. However, Ayoko, you are even more clueless than I thought when it comes to non-destructive magic." "Well, what can I do?" Ayoko said resentfully. "Who told me to be an apprentice magician with less than 2 years of experience? I don't think it has anything to do with time," Yuju replied unhurriedly. "After all, if it's a destructive magic, you can learn it very quickly." Ayoko was at a loss for words. However, when Noah heard the conversation between Ayoko and Yuju, he raised his head in surprise and looked at Ayoko. "You're just an apprentice magician? What?" Ayoko stared at Noah with a sinister expression. "Are you making fun of me? But that's not right." Noah didn't pay attention to Ayoko's angry expression as he spoke in surprise. "I can feel that you are very special. There is a very powerful force hidden in your body. How can you be just an apprentice magician?" Once those words were spoken, Ayoko and Yuju's expressions tightened. They looked at each other, and the gazes they used to look at Noah became serious. Ayoko, in particular, had a gloomy look on her face. "The force you sensed, it can't be the magic in my body, right?" "Magic?" Noah was slightly startled, and immediately looked pensive. As mentioned before, Noah's crush in this world can't be called magic. It can only be called magic, because in this world magic and magic are different mysteries. Both of them have the same source of power, but there is a fundamental difference. No matter how much time and technology is used, It can't be realized. That is magic. And no matter how inconceivable it is, as long as there is time and technology, anyone can realize the mysteries. That is magic. For example, humans can make fire. Therefore, magic with the property of fire can never be called magic. Therefore, in simple terms, if human science can achieve the same phenomenon, it is magic. If it can't be achieved, it is magic. The reason why Noah's crush can't be called magic in this world is because of this difference. However, magic is not necessarily better than magic. After all, magic only refers to those mysteries that can't be achieved by human hands. It doesn't necessarily have powerful strength. Some powerful magic is even more qualified to be called magic. Of course, Noah's crush is different from the magic and magic of this world. One of them is the power of the sorcerer's soul, while the other is the power of the root of all things. They can't be lumped together. And according to the memories he obtained from Gaia and Alea, Noah also knew the truth of this world's magic. It is a method that magicians create or obtain in order to reach the root. Magic is the ultimate method to reach the root. If magicians can reach the root, then they can obtain magic. Similarly, if a magician develops magic, then they can reach the root. In other words, magic was the method left behind by those who had successfully reached the origin. To reach the origin, you have magic. A thought arose in Noah's mind. He was startled and hurriedly asked Aoko about it. In other words, you have successfully reached the root. Unfortunately, as I said, I'm just an apprentice magician, Aoko said in a depressed tone. My magic is passed down from the Aozaki family. I have only inherited it. Moreover, I can't use it right now. Don't tell me you don't know about the magic of the Aozaki family. Yuju looked deeply at Noah. It is impossible for a magician to not know about the magic of the Aozaki family, right? Noah didn't answer Yoju's question. This was because Noah had a thought in his mind. If the feeling that Noah felt from Aoko's body was the same as that of Gaia, and Alea's snow-white world was magic, then wouldn't that snow-white world be the location of the root? After all, magic is a mystery that directly leads to the root, isn't it? If that was the case, it would explain why Noah felt like a snow-white world from Aoko. But this doesn't make sense. If that snow-white world is the location of the root, then Noah can be considered to have successfully reached the root. If that's the case, then why didn't Noah obtain the magic of this world? With all these questions, Noah couldn't help but feel vexed. Seeing Noah's vexed appearance, Aoko and Yuju looked at each other again. Although they didn't know what Noah was thinking, just from the fact that Noah, as a magician, didn't know about the magic of the Aozaki family, Noah seemed a bit unusual. This cohabitant who had only started living in the manor house today had a lot of secrets. He had the legendary King Arthur's noble artifact. He was able to perfectly hide his magic. In addition, he had an abnormal reaction to magic. Who would think that Noah was ordinary? Of course, Aoko and Yuju didn't think that Noah wasn't a magician of this world. The cohabitation between the magician, and magician still had to continue. Chapter 303. As a result, Noah, who had stayed up until midnight because of the magic, was unable to come up with any constructive conjectures. Now, Noah was basically certain that the strange feeling he felt from Aozaki Aoko's body was the magic of the Aozaki family. However, Noah was still unsure as to why the magic was able to give him the same feeling as when he was in the snow-white world. He was certain that the snow-white world was the location of the origin. No, it should be said that if Aozaki Aoko's magic was proof that the snow-white world was the location of the origin, then the fact that Noah himself had been there, but had not been able to obtain the magic negated this possibility. As a result, this matter smoothly entered a dead end. Unable to understand, Noah decided not to think about it, and fell into a deep sleep, as if he had given up. He slept all the way until dawn. In the morning, the white fog seemed to be able to freeze people as it carried a low temperature, and filled the entire manor house. At dawn, Noah woke up from his sleep, and felt the cold outside his blanket. Almost like any other ordinary person, he instantly had the thought of going back to sleep. However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment. After all, Noah was not an ordinary person. After all, even if his body's strength was suppressed to the level of an ordinary person by the limit ability, Noah had already gotten used to the cold. The 4 years of training in the deep mountains and forests had indeed benefited Noah a lot. It was also because of that period of time that Noah was able to cultivate such a strong adaptation to the surrounding environment. This bit of cold was not that difficult to endure for Noah. Gotcha! After putting on his Mitsubishi high school uniform, Noah opened the door and came out of his room. He yawned as he walked in the cold corridor under the low temperature. Other than a television, there were almost no other modern products in the beaded manor house. Naturally, there was also no heating, which made the winter in the manor house very difficult to endure. There was a heater in the lobby on the first floor of the manor house, but it was said to have been unused for at least a few years. Naturally, it wasn't used now. The interior of the mansion was very large. It had 3 floors, so there were many empty rooms in the mansion. If they were rented out, the owner of the mansion would definitely make a lot of money. The corridor was carpeted, and the surroundings were decorated with old furniture, making it look like a medieval castle. Although it was luxurious, it also gave people a sense of coldness and loneliness. The stairs leading to the lobby on the first floor were at the end of the corridor, and in the middle of the hall. Walking down the stairs in the center of the hall, Noah came to the hall on the first floor of the hall with the unique click sound of the wooden stairs. Before he could finish walking down the stairs, Noah, who had reached the hall, suddenly paused. He seemed to have sensed something as he looked at the corner of the hall below through the railing of the stairs. There was a scene that would make people hold their breath. Beside the stove, a young girl dressed in a nun's black robe sat quietly with her legs spread out from her sitting position. She had an extremely beautiful posture of a young girl. Not only that, but the beautiful girl also leaned her body in the direction of the heater. Her eyes were closed, and her head was slightly lowered, as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. That's right, the girl was in a deep sleep. Although from the outside, she looked like a person who had no signs of life and was in a deep sleep, and she didn't move at all like a statue, Noah could still feel the girl's weak breathing. It was so weak that if one didn't get close, it would be impossible to detect it. Looking at Yuzhu, who was leaning against the heater and sleeping in a beautiful posture, Noah couldn't help but reveal an expression of amazement at this beautiful scene. However, a tranquil feeling emerged in his heart. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because even though Yuzhu's sleeping face was as expressionless as before, Noah could feel a sense of security emanating from Yuzhu at this very moment. Yes, Yuzhu was very at ease, just like a child nestled in the arms of their parents. Yuzhu leaned against the heater, as if she was sleeping in a cradle with her parents' soft whispers. There was an indescribable sense of security. Feeling that sense of security, Noah's gaze towards Yuzhu also revealed a very brief moment of gentleness. Aoko was right. Yuzhu treasured this manor very much, to the extent that she treated it as a cradle with her parents. Presumably, staying in this manor, Yuzhu should be able to feel the comfort of having her parents by her side at all times. That's why she was able to sleep so peacefully in the manor's hall. Of course, sitting on the ground like this in such a cold day, with a completely inactive heater, the low temperature would definitely make it impossible for anyone to sleep, unless they wanted to sleep and never wake up. However, Noah wasn't worried about this matter. After all, Yuzhu was a magician, so it shouldn't be too difficult for her to solve the problem of temperature, right? Thinking about this, Noah went down the stairs and came to the hall. He originally wanted to carry Yuzhu back to her room to sleep, but after thinking about it carefully, he gave up on that idea. Not to mention that Yuzhu's room was in the west wing. It was an area that even Aoko prohibited from going there for no reason. It was Yuzhu's territory. If Noah went there, he would definitely anger Yuzhu. Moreover, with Yuzhu's personality, she wasn't an ordinary girl who would accept the kindness of others. Not only would Yuzhu not accept the considerate actions of Noah, who had invaded her territory not long ago, but was now living in her most treasured manor. She would probably be angry because of this, right? Really, why are my roommates all so troublesome? Noah couldn't help but complain. In the absolute dual blades, Ivanli, Julie, and Lilith were all considered to have been Noah's roommates. One of them had an unstable personality, one was naive and pure, one was overconfident, and all of them were unpredictable. They never made Noah feel at ease for even a moment. Now, Ayoko, and Yuju didn't even need to be mentioned. One was naturally unwilling to admit defeat, while the other was silent and willful. How could Noah not complain? Casey. At this time, on the stairs, the unique sound of footsteps mixed with the wooden stairs sounded again. What are you doing here? Ayoko's energetic voice sounded as she came down the stairs. When Ayoko came to Noah's side and saw Yuju sleeping by the stove, she looked at Noah with a meaningful gaze. Is peeping at a girl's sleeping posture also one of your interests? I think it's not difficult for most people to imagine that I'm hesitating whether to wake up my roommate, who is sleeping on the ground in this cold weather. Noah glanced at Ayoko. Or is it your interest to deliberately neglect me? I'm just giving you a piece of advice. Don't think that just because Yuju is like that, you don't care about her sleeping face being seen by the opposite sex. Ayoko brushed her waist-length hair and said intentionally or unintentionally, I can guarantee that if Yuju knew that you saw her sleeping face, she would be furious. Is that so? Noah said angrily. If that's the case, why would she sleep in such a conspicuous place? This is Yuju's mansion. She has the right to sleep wherever she wants. Ayoko said disapprovingly. Besides, because of the foreign magician, Yuju was busy until very late yesterday. It's not strange that she was so tired that she fell asleep, right? What? Noah asked suspiciously. The foreign magician's matter hasn't been solved yet? Ayoko frowned slightly, and her eyes began to turn cold. That has nothing to do with you. It's the responsibility of a manager. From Ayoko's expression, Noah could clearly feel her hostility. Obviously, Ayoko didn't let down her guard against him. After all, on the surface, Noah was also a foreign magician. I really don't understand your thoughts. Noah sighed. You're so obviously hostile to me. And you're like a good person who reminds me that I didn't offend Yuju. Since you treat me as an enemy, why don't you hate me? As soon as this sentence came out, Ayoko's eyes widened in an instant. Then her eyes turned sharp. A faint blue light that represented magic bloomed from Ayoko's body. Chapter 304. Wang. The magic seal on Ayoko's arm emitted a sound that sounded like an engine, accompanied by a phosphorescent glow. Her magic power burned in the air like blue flames. Noah didn't expect Ayoko's reaction to be so intense. His body tensed up as he gazed at Ayoko, whose head was lowered and whose body was burning with magical power. At this time, Ayoko slowly raised her head. Her expression was as cold as a machine, and her eyes were as sharp as knives, piercing straight into Noah's body. You said I have obvious hostility toward you? That I don't hate you? Ayoko Aoyagi's voice carried a hint of regret as she said this. It was as if she was blaming herself for not noticing this before. Noah didn't understand why Ayoko's reaction was so intense, but that didn't mean he would obediently endure her capriciousness. President Ayoko, what do you mean? Unlike Ayoko, Noah didn't mobilize his magical power. He stared straight at Ayoko, releasing a powerful pressure from his body. Can I take your actions as meaning you want to start a war with me? Ayoko clicked her tongue, but she did not retract her magic power. Instead, she stared at Noah, her pale eyes filled with an intense emotion that she had never felt before. Just as the tense atmosphere was about to explode, a cold and indifferent voice slowly reverberated. What are you doing? Following this sentence, Yuju slowly walked out from the shadows of the hall, with a thick book in her hand. Although her words were directed at Noah and Ayoko, Yuju's eyes were only on Ayoko. It's not like you to get angry for no reason, Ayoko. Ayoko fell silent. After a while, the engine-like sound and the blue phosphorescent light disappeared from Ayoko's body. Ayoko didn't even look at Noah and Yuju. With a somewhat ugly expression, she walked directly to the entrance, opened the door and walked out. Watching Ayoko's back disappear from the entrance, Noah frowned. What's wrong with that guy? Yuju also stared at the direction where Ayoko disappeared, And after a while she softly said, "What did you say to Aoko?" Noah pondered for a moment, and then revealed his conversation with Aoko to Yuju. After listening to Noah's recount, Yuju's empty eyes showed a touch of surprise. She thoughtfully touched her chin with her pale slender finger, and asked hesitantly, "Do you really think Aoko doesn't hate you?" "To be honest, there should be a lot of things about me that can cause that guy to hate me. I also think that guy should hate me." Noah was still frowning, puzzled after thinking about it for a long time. Or could it be that Ms. President is like a good person, who cares about that guy no matter how hateful he is? Then I can't guarantee that she won't hate me. Hearing Noah's words, Yuju slightly nodded, as if she understood something. After seeing Yuju's reaction, Noah asked, "Did I say something wrong that caused her reaction to be so intense?" "No," Yuju expressionlessly replied. "It should be said that your statement was too accurate, so accurate that even Qingzi himself didn't realize it. That was why Qingzi's reaction became like that." After saying that, Yuju didn't seem to want to talk about this matter anymore. Her black hole-like eyes shifted to Noah, and there was a clear displeasure in her eyes that anyone could see. "Why didn't you wake me up?" The sudden question made Noah blink his eyes. Then, he understood that Yuju was referring to seeing him sleeping. Just as Aozaki Aoko said, Yuju was also concerned about whether her sleeping posture would be seen by the opposite sex. Undoubtedly, she had never thought about love, yet she was obsessed with such strange things. Were all the people living in this mansion weird? Noah sighed in his heart, and said without hesitation, "If I woke you up, wouldn't you be angry?" Yuju was stunned, and then the displeasure in her eyes became even more intense. Just as Noah said, if Noah woke Yuju up directly, she would still be angry when she found out that her sleeping posture had been seen. "Since you'll be angry if I wake you up, if I don't wake you up, you might not know that I've seen your sleeping face, and won't throw a tantrum. In that case, to avoid trouble, it's better to turn a blind eye." Noah waved his hand and walked towards the entrance. "After all, we're living together, so this kind of situation is inevitable. If you care, remember to sleep in your room next time. Just don't catch a cold." With that, Noah pushed open the door to the entrance, walked out, and disappeared from the mansion. The mansion returned to silence once again. The displeasure in Yoju's eyes disappeared little by little. She stood there like a statue, motionless. Chirp, chirp, chirp. At the same time, a little blue bird flew out of nowhere and landed on the railing of the stairs. It jumped up and down while letting out a pleasant chirp. That appearance actually gave people the feeling that it was clamoring for something. It was a blue robin. Yuju didn't seem surprised by this scene. She closed her eyes. What Yuju didn't tell Noah was that Aozaki Aoko was actually a little insensitive, or rather, she would sometimes go off the rails. Aozaki Aoko had a very strange view of people's likes and dislikes. No matter who she disliked or hated, as long as it wasn't necessary, Aozaki Aoko would forget all about them. She could even chat and drink tea with them the next day. On the other hand, people that Aozaki Aoko didn't dislike, including family members, friends, and even lovers, might cause Aozaki Aoko to alienate them for no reason. This was because Aozaki Aoko couldn't stand the existence of someone who could disturb her emotions. Therefore, Aozaki Aoko would treat such people as a special existence. They were enemies. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The blue robin flapped its wings in an exaggerated way, as if it was seriously protesting something. The dark-skinned girl seemed to understand the blue robin's words. Her cold and emotionless voice slowly echoed in the manor house. Indeed, maybe it was a wrong decision to let him live here. With that, Yuju turned around, but it's still within the acceptable range. Ignoring the messenger bird's dissatisfaction, Yuju walked towards her room with quiet steps. Sigh. On the way to school, Noah sighed as if he was tired. What's going on? To be honest, Noah didn't dislike Aozaki Aoko and Yuju. From the memories he obtained from Gaia and Aleia, Noah knew how crazy the magicians in this world were. He also knew that most of them could be described with one word: insane. However, Noah didn't find anything he hated about Aozaki Aoko and Yuju. Even if it was Yuju, who lived her life as a magician, perhaps she would kill without mercy, but she would not kill for no reason. Therefore, Noah didn't think that Aozaki Aoko and Yuju were difficult to get along with. At most, he had a headache because of their lifestyle and troublesome personalities. Otherwise, even if he was called an evil guest who occupied other people's territory, Noah wouldn't agree to live under the same roof as Aozaki Aoko and Yuju. But now Noah realized how naive his thoughts were. Aozaki Aoko and Yuju, these two girls' personalities weren't troublesome, but extremely troublesome. Noah felt that his decision to live in the manor house was too hasty. Woof 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 woof. Just as Noah's thoughts were running wild, suddenly, a burst of chaotic barking sounded without any warning, attracting Noah's attention. Woof 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 woof. The chaotic barking of the dogs became clearer and clearer, accompanied by a series of even more chaotic footsteps. The footsteps approached Noah from afar. Noah narrowed his eyes and instantly activated his sensory ability. The magic sealed by the limit ability began to be released little by little, allowing abundant magic to flow through his body. Chapter 305. Woof, 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 woof. The fierce barking of the dogs lingered in the surroundings like noise, frantically reverberating in the air above the asphalt road that was covered by the forest. The owners of these sounds were like fierce beasts that wanted to fight for their prey. In a burst of violent aura, they gradually approached their target. Noah calmly glanced around and swept his line of sight to the surrounding trees. He saw that in the forest that was still slightly dark, pairs of green eyes that were full of ferocity quietly appeared in the bushes, imprinting into Noah's eyes. They were stray dogs. Moreover, they were a group of starving dogs that did not have a single piece of fur on their bodies. They were shivering in the cold wind, but their mouths were open and dripping with saliva as they unswervingly surrounded Noah's position. The flashing green eyes did not look like they were looking at living creatures at all, but more like they were looking at food. Just like that, the pack of wild dogs gradually approached Noah with a sense of eagerness to launch an attack. They surrounded Noah, who was standing on the asphalt road of the ramp. Seeing this group of wild dogs, Noah was a little surprised, but also a little enlightened. There were indeed a lot of wild dogs in Sanyo City. Because they had nowhere to go, these wild dogs would generally gather in the wild or the forest, and even directly breed there. If it were not for the lack of food and the environment, which caused some wild dogs to die not long after being born, the forest in Sanyo City would have been filled with wild dogs long ago. In order to get food, these wild dogs would sometimes attack passers-by like wild beasts, and were an existence that the residents of Sanyo City hated. If Noah hadn't activated his sensing ability, he would have thought that these wild dogs were the survivors of the forest who were preparing to attack him. However, with his sensing ability fully activated, Noah could clearly feel that in the forest not far from the group of wild dogs, an extremely majestic aura was walking over here step by step. That aura more or less made Noah feel a trace of danger. Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Ignoring the wild dogs that were gradually approaching, he looked forward with a burning gaze, closely staring in the direction of the aura that he had sensed. Not long after, a figure slowly appeared in the forest. Woo! At this moment, the surrounding wild dogs seemed to have encountered a terrifying enemy, or perhaps it was better to say that they were welcoming their leader. With a whimper, they abandoned the food in front of them without hesitation and retreated in unison. Dada! The black shadow, on the other hand, walked out of the forest with powerful yet graceful steps, exposing itself to Noah's eyes. When he saw the full appearance of the person who came, Noah's eyes flickered uncontrollably, and even his heart skipped a beat. What appeared in front of Noah was a golden beast. It had the appearance of a wolf, but it was also more ferocious than a tiger. The fur on its body was the most dazzling, golden like the sun, and its eyes were emerald green like gemstones. However, there was no rationality in the golden wolf's excessively beautiful eyes. In fact, the moment it saw Noah, those emerald green eyes seemed to turn red, flashing with a bloody light. A sense of crisis that came out of nowhere made Noah's pupils shrink. Without any hesitation, he completely removed the limit ability, causing all of his strength to return to his body in an instant. Roar! Almost at the same time, the golden wolf let out an extremely beautiful and resounding roar. Its four limbs on the ground bent, causing the golden wolf to tense up like a spring. Dong! In the next moment, amidst the stomping sounds that caused even the atmosphere to tremble, the golden lone wolf turned into a meteor and tore through space. Like a sun that was rapidly moving forward, it carried a tremendous force as it charged out violently. Kacha kacha! Wherever the golden meteor passed, the ground cracked inch by inch. Even the space seemed to be unable to bear the burden, producing sharp buzzing sounds like teeth grinding. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Wang! The magical power in Noah's body completely erupted, like a violent flame, soaring into the sky. His body was suddenly covered in a white light, illuminating the entire surrounding space. Wang Wang! Immediately, the white light that rose sharply was like a stream of air, converging on one of Noah's hands. Finally, it turned into a transparent halo, covering Noah's tightly clenched fist. Ha! In the midst of a cold shout, Noah faced the direction of the golden meteor and heavily punched out his fist. In that instant, the true power of the super high-level destruction spell, Crush, finally broke out. Pung! In the midst of a thunderous muffled sound, the space in front of Noah actually directly shattered like glass, exploding into a pitch-black hole. Pung 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 pung. A series of muffled sounds rang out one after another. The space in front of Noah, as if it was cut open by a sword, was continuously shattered, outlining a pitch-black crack, spreading forward. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black crack and the golden meteor suddenly collided together. Dong! In the midst of an earth-shattering sound, a circle of shock waves turned into a substantial halo, like the explosion of a star, suddenly spreading out. Pa! The ground formed by the asphalt road simply exploded, and without the slightest suspense, was razed to the ground. The surrounding trees were affected by the substantial halo of shock waves, as if they were directly annihilated, and one by one, they were smashed into wood dregs. Pung! In the midst of a muffled sound, the impact that turned into a halo ruthlessly hit Noah and the golden wolf, causing a hair-raising collision sound. Goo! Noah and the golden wolf let out a muffled groan at the same time, and their bodies were completely bounced out, like kites with a broken string. One slammed heavily on the ground, then turned over and stood up, while the other slammed into a tree, then slid down with all four limbs on the ground. Kneeling on the ground with one knee on the ground, Noah, who was covering his chest and feeling the bursts of pain from his chest, raised his face full of shock. In that blow just now, Noah really used his full strength. Even so, he couldn't gain the upper hand at all. What is the origin of the golden wolf? Compared with the somewhat shocked Noah, the golden wolf didn't seem to have enough wisdom to compete with human beings, nor did it have the slightest hesitation because of being repelled. Its four limbs tightened, and like a beast that only had eyes for its prey, it stared at Noah with a murderous light in its eyes. Realizing that now wasn't the time to be shocked, Noah immediately exerted his ability to control his emotions to the limit. He suppressed all the emotions in his heart, stood up, and the magical power in his body continuously rose. No matter what, the golden wolf in front of him had the power to match his full strength, and this was certain. Although he didn't know why this golden wolf appeared in Sani City, and why it attacked him, Noah knew that he had to fight with his life on the line. However, Noah, who was ready, suddenly narrowed his eyes again. Roar! The golden wolf let out a resounding and beautiful roar, and its whole body bloomed with golden light. And in this golden light, a soft white light entered Noah's vision. Noah clearly saw it. In the chest of the golden wolf, or rather in the body, in the center of the soft white light, a broken feather was suspended in the middle. Impressively, it was the world fragment. The world fragment was in the golden wolf's body. Buzz 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 buzz. In the soft white light, the broken feather trembled and made an excited buzzing sound. Roar! In contrast to the world fragment in its body, the golden wolf looked at Noah with even more ferocity, and its body surged with a fierce aura. Noah took a deep breath, calmly looked at the increasingly violent golden wolf, and slowly stretched out his hand. However, at this time, a suppressed angry voice sounded from the depths of the forest, and entered Noah and the golden wolf's ears. "Bio, come back." The golden wolf's roar came to an abrupt end. Who? Because Noah was highly focused, he didn't notice that someone had come to the scene and immediately activated his sensing ability. Chapter 306. As previously mentioned, Noah's sensory ability was similar to intuition, but it was strengthened to the extreme, to the point of being like a scanner or even a radar. However, no matter how powerful it was, the essence of sensory ability was still intuition, and the like. Intuition could identify a person's aura, but there was no way to identify a person's appearance. Thus, under Noah's sensory ability, in the forest, an unfamiliar aura accompanied by a tall figure entered his range of sensory ability, imprinting itself into Noah's mind. It was unknown if the person discovered that he had been found, but his voice became more and more angry. "Bio, still not coming back." At the same time the voice reverberated, an exquisite geometric pattern flashed on the forehead of the lone golden wolf called Bio, causing the golden wolf to let out a dissatisfied growl. In the next second, the golden wolf's figure turned into a golden stream of light, flying into the depths of the forest. In a moment, it arrived at the side of the person in the forest, carried him on its back, and broke through the air. Noah reacted as soon as the golden wolf's figure moved. But in that instant, the golden wolf flew to the side of the person who had suddenly spoken, carried him on its back, and once again turned into a golden stream of light, flying into the depths of the forest at an extremely fast speed. In less than a second, the golden wolf had completely disappeared from Noah's field of vision, leaving Noah no time to chase after it. Its speed was extremely fast, but in terms of speed, if Noah did not use leap, he would not be able to compare to the golden wolf. A golden wolf with a world fragment in its body. Where did it come from? Noah, with an unprecedentedly serious attitude, began to search for the memories of this world that had been instilled into him by Gaia and Aleia. Not long after, a term appeared in Noah's mind. Could it be, that's a magical beast? Just like how magicians existed among humans, some creatures that only existed in fantasy and legends also existed among beasts. Some of them came from the ecosystem, some were born from the imagination of humans, some became powerful individuals due to longevity, and some came from the evolution of nature. This type of creature that had broken away from the category of wild beasts and possessed great power was known as the magical beast. For example, demi-human fairies, giants, ghosts, dragons, and other creatures were such existences. And among these magical beasts, there was a race of werewolves. However, there was no such thing as golden hair among the werewolves. The silver werewolves were the leaders of the werewolves. They were the most powerful existences among the werewolves. Without a doubt, the golden wolf was superior to the silver wolf. In other words, it is an existence that surpasses magical beasts. Noah lowered his head and muttered, "I see. Is it a fantasy breed?" The existence that surpassed wild beasts was known as the magical beast. The existence that surpassed the magical beast was the illusory beast. It was also known as the fantasy breed. It was said that above the illusory beast, there was a type of divine beast that only existed in myths. However, that kind of existence was already comparable to the gods themselves. It was almost impossible for them to appear in this era, where there were no gods. Therefore, Noah was certain that the golden wolf was a legendary fantasy breed. Moreover, because of the world fragment, the golden wolf seemed to have been affected in some way, faintly surpassing the category of a fantasy breed. Otherwise, even if the golden wolf was a fantasy breed, it was unlikely for it to have that kind of power. Even Noah could fight evenly with it at full strength. Noah did not think that an ordinary fantasy breed could achieve this kind of power. Raising his head and looking in the direction where the golden wolf disappeared, Noah could not help but laugh bitterly. Things seemed to have become a little troublesome. After saying that, Noah sorted out his emotions and turned around, as if he had sensed something. He looked behind him. There Yuzhu, who was dressed in black, was rushing over with somewhat hurried footsteps. When Yuzhu arrived at the scene, The scene in front of her made her black hole-like eyes reveal a shocked expression. The ramp that was originally paved with asphalt seemed to have been razed to the ground, exposing the charred earth. The surrounding forest seemed to have been bitten by something, and a large piece of it was missing on both sides. The guardrail of the asphalt road had long disappeared. The broken wood of the trees was scattered all over the ground. Some of the green leaves had turned yellow, and some had become charred, as if they had been burned overnight by a fire. It was especially miserable. What shocked Yuzhu the most was the magical aura that still filled the air. The magical aura that made one's heart palpitate like a volcano that had just erupted caused Yuzhu's heartbeat to involuntarily speed up. When she noticed that the exact same magical aura was surging on Noah's body, how could Yuzhu not understand who had caused all of this? Fortunately, Yuzhu had arrived late and was not able to see the space that had been directly broken by Noah's full-strength crush. Otherwise, it was easy to imagine how shocked Yuzhu would be. Looking at Noah standing in the middle of the charred earth ramp, Yuzhu slightly clenched her small fists and walked step by step to Noah's side. Her voice was extremely grave. What exactly happened? From Yuzhu's tone, Noah could tell that she attached great importance to this matter. Therefore, Noah did not need to ask. He could even guess that if he hid this matter, Yuzhu would definitely not trust him again. Of course, Noah did not intend to hide it. There was nothing to hide about this matter. As you can see, I was attacked. Noah sighed. Moreover, it was not an ordinary attack. Yuzhu did not speak. She just looked at Noah and quietly waited for Noah's explanation. Noah turned around and faced Yuzhu. Fantasy breed. If I'm not wrong, this is the attacker. Moreover, behind this fantasy breed, there seems to be a magician controlling it. What did you say? Yuzhu's pretty face finally changed uncontrollably. Fantasy breed. This term might be just a simple taboo to a layman, but to a magician like Yuzhu, it was a miracle that absolutely could not be ignored. Yes, a miracle. Fantasy breed itself was an existence that could be directly linked to the terms mysterious and miraculous. For a fantasy breed whose existence itself was mysterious, its existence alone was above magic. In this world, the mysterious would be defeated by an even more powerful mystery. Compared to a fantasy breed, the mystery of magic seemed weak. That level of mystery was nothing to a fantasy breed that existed in fantasy and legends. Therefore, magic could not be compared to a fantasy breed. No matter how strong the magic was, there was no way to leave any damage on a fantasy breed. For a magician, a fantasy breed was a natural enemy. There are fantasy breeds in Sanyi City, and there are magicians who can control fantasy breeds? Yuzhu seemed to want to deny this, but in the end, she chose to remain silent. Noah knew that Yuzhu was starting to find it difficult to back down. As the manager of Sanyi City's spirit vein, how could Yuzhu ignore the appearance of a fantasy breed and a magician who could control fantasy breeds in her territory? After all, fantasy breeds were the natural enemies of magicians. As long as it was a magician, it was absolutely impossible to defeat a fantasy breed. It was not that she looked down on magicians, but it was just like a cat eating a mouse. Fantasy breeds were the bane of magicians, and there was no other way. If Noah, who had Avalon, made Yuzhu helpless, then a magician with a fantasy breed was a real threat. Poor Yuzhu. She had just solved Noah's problem, but now she had to worry about a fantasy breed and a magician who could control fantasy breeds. Let's leave this place first. Noah interrupted Yuzhu's silence. The commotion just now was too big. The residents of Hakwanushi and even Sanyi City must have noticed it. It will be troublesome if someone comes up later. Yuzhu immediately looked around. After hesitating for a moment, she walked forward. Why don't you come with me? Go? Noah was stunned. Go where? Yuzhu did not turn around and directly threw out two words. The church. Chapter 307. In Mayo City, there was a church. The residents of Mayo City usually referred to it as the church. Etienne Church. This was the full name of the church. It was located next to the No. 1 General Hospital in Sanyi City. It was as if it was on purpose to attract the attention of passers-by, and they couldn't help but take a look at it. For Mayo City, which had only been a small city for 10 years, the existence of a church was a bit extravagant. This was because there were no foreigners here, nor were there any devout believers. Only the residents of Sani City, which was not far from the church, would come here to pray on Sunday. Compared to the size of the church, it was more or less a waste. However, this church had an extraordinary significance to the people in charge of Mayo City. This was because it was the branch of the Magic Association in Sani City. It was also the branch of the Holy Church that viewed magicians as heretics and was the archenemy of the Magic Association. However, they were currently in a state of truce. Although Aoko and Yuju were both magicians, they did not join the Magic Association, nor did they join the Holy Church. They only managed Mayo City's spiritual vein as freelance magicians. As the family that managed Mayo City's spiritual vein, although they were freelance magicians, they had a cooperative relationship with the Magic Association and the Holy Church. Therefore, as long as Aoko and Yuju were still the managers of Mayo City's spiritual vein, as long as they did not offend the Magic Association and the Holy Church, the Magic Association and Holy Church branches in Mayo City had the obligation to help them. Of course, Aoko Aozaki and Yuju both had their own insistence when it came to defending against external enemies. They wouldn't allow the church, which was neither friend nor foe, to interfere, nor would they take the initiative to ask for help. However, when it came to dealing with trivial matters, no matter how unwilling they were, they could only ask for help from the church. Therefore, under the guidance of Yuju, Noah arrived at the location of the Hatian church. Creak. As if expecting a visit, the iron door of the church was pushed open, and a very tall mature woman dressed in a nun's uniform walked out of the church. Under the gaze of Noah and Yuju, the tall nun walked to the entrance of the church in a dignified manner. For some unknown reason, her eyes were tightly shut, but she accurately turned her face towards Yuju and met her gaze. "Hello, Miss Juyuanji. I haven't seen you for a while, right?" Juyuan Temple. That was Yuju's surname. Although it was a bit unimportant, Noah only knew Yuju's surname by chance. It was said that the surname Juyuan Temple had a great background. It seemed to be a famous plutocrat in Sani City. However, Yuju's relationship with the Juyuan Temple group wasn't good. It could even be said to be bad. As for the reason, it was probably because the Juyuanji group was not a magic family, but an ordinary chaebol. Yuju's father was an ordinary person. Yuju's mother was a pure-blooded witch. Therefore, Yuju was born with an excellent magician bloodline. This was Juyuanji Yuju. "It has indeed been a while, Sister Zhou say Weijia," Yuju said to Sister Weijia Zhou with an emotionless tone. Moreover, she didn't beat around the bush at all, as she spoke of her intentions. "I have something to ask Father Yongli. Father Yongli is in the church." Jose Weijia's voice sounded a bit cold. Her eyes were still closed, but she turned her head and faced Noah. "However, Miss Jiyuan Temple, do you want to bring this person in as well?" From Jose Weijia's voice, Noah could hear a sense of coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. And this coldness became a lot stronger after Yuju revealed Noah's identity. "Don't worry, he is related. It's just that the technique of hiding his magical power is beyond our imagination. Qing Zi and I didn't discover the magical power in his body with the help of the barrier," Yuju said. "However, Sister Weijia should be able to sense it, right?" This sentence made Noah pause, and at the same time, it also made Jose Weijia frown and nod. Indeed, there is a feeling of power flowing through his body. After saying this, Jose Weijia stepped aside and walked away without looking back. She didn't even say goodbye. She was extremely cold. Yuju didn't seem to be surprised at all. She lifted her feet and walked into the church. Noah, who was following behind Yuju, curiously asked, "How could that sister feel the magical power in my body? My magic power is obviously hidden again, isn't it?" After the battle was over, Noah once again used his limit ability to seal all the power in his body. Therefore, logically speaking, other people shouldn't be able to sense the magical power in Noah's body. But Yuju's answer made Noah a bit surprised. Sister Weijia has a congenital amblyopia and is now completely blind. But because of this, She has very powerful senses. If someone approaches her, she will definitely discover it. Yuzhu replied, even if you have concealed your magical power, as long as there is magical power flowing through your body, Sister Weijia will be able to sense it. In addition, Sister Weijia is a member of the Holy Church. She is very sensitive to the magical power of heretical magicians. You won't be able to hide it from her. Yuzhu's words made Noah surprised. She has very powerful senses. She can even sense magical power flowing through someone's body? Isn't that very similar to Noah's perception ability? He didn't think that there would be a sister in the Holy Church who had a similar ability to Noah's perception ability. This really made Noah surprised. However, Noah also understood Josei Weijia's coldness. No wonder her attitude was so bad. If Josei Weijia was a member of the Holy Church, then it wouldn't be hard to explain. The church in the morning was especially desolate. Just like the mansion, the church didn't have a heater. The cold air filled the seemingly cold church, making people want to turn around and leave. And in this church, in front of the cross, a tall figure stood there. It was a man wearing a cloak-like coat. Wen Bingyongli, also a member of the Holy Church. But he is different from Sister Weijia. He is neutral. Normally, he represents the Holy Church to communicate with us. Yuzhu said softly, but her gaze was very strict. His duty is to monitor us, but he also has the duty of assisting the manager of San'e City's spirit vein. Our target this time is him. After saying this, Yuzhu seemed to have realized something and closed her mouth. This was because when Noah and Wen Bingyongli walked into the church, their gazes suddenly met without any warning. Moreover, one frowned, while the other opened his eyes wide in shock. Immediately after, his eyes flashed with sharpness for a moment before returning to normal. Then, the priest named Wen Bingyongli had a calm smile on his face as he walked towards the door step by step. Da-da-da-da. As Wen Bingyongli approached, a suffocating and unpleasant feeling suddenly appeared in the air. It was killing intent. True killing intent. Moreover, it was faintly discernible killing intent rising from the seemingly harmless priest. What did this mean? It meant that not only did Wen Bingyongli kill someone, but he also wanted to kill someone. And the target of Wen Bingyongli's killing intent was Noah. It was because he felt Wen Bingyongli's killing intent that Noah frowned. What was going on? Although he couldn't understand it, it didn't stop Noah from reacting. Without any intention of releasing his power again, Noah quietly looked at Wen Bingyongli, who was gradually approaching him. A trace of mockery appeared in his deep, dark eyes. At this moment, Wen Bingyongli stopped in his tracks and frowned. Then he smiled and looked at Noah with interest. Interesting. I didn't expect to meet such an interesting guest. Yuzhu, who felt that something was wrong, muttered to herself for a while, then chose to stand aside and watch. Noah looked straight at Wen Bingyongli and smiled, but there wasn't much of a smile in his smile. I also think it's interesting. It's one thing for a priest to have such a strong killing intent, but he also wants to kill someone he just met for the first time for no reason. It's really interesting. There's still a reason, the priest said with a sincere smile. I just want to see if I can kill him. Chapter 308. I just wanted to see if I could kill you. His words made the temperature in the room drop to freezing point. What was more frightening was that Wen Bingyongli did not sound like he was joking. Instead, he sounded very serious. This made Noah calm down instead, and he asked unhurriedly, "You mean to say that your so-called reason is just to see if you can kill me?" "I can't help it, because you're a very interesting person." Wen Bingyongli looked straight at Noah and said calmly, "When I saw you, I had a feeling that I wanted to kill you. I can feel that you're in a very weak state compared to your current strength. My intuition told me that if I wanted to kill you, if I couldn't succeed in your current state, it would be impossible for me to succeed. This made me want to see if I could do it. Unfortunately, you found out my intention," Wen Bingyongli said in a regretful tone. "This made me feel that I couldn't kill you even if I made a move. Instead, the person who would die would be me, so I gave up." Hearing Wen Bingyongli's words, even Yuzhu, who was watching from the side, felt a chill in her heart. What did Wen Bingyongli mean? What he meant was that he could feel that Noah was in a very weak state compared to his current strength, which was the best state to deal with. It was because of this that when Bing Yongli became interested in Noah, he wanted to try and see if he could kill the other party once. That was the reason. There was no clear reason. There was no clear hostility. There was no reason for him to do so, nor was there any reason for him to do so. However, when Bin Jiangli wanted to have a try, so he wanted to hurt Noah. Moreover, he wanted to kill Noah. This person was simply a lunatic. Noah's eyes started to turn cold. In other words, if I also want to try and see if I can kill you, then I can do it, right? Then please allow me to beg for mercy. When Bing Yongli shrugged and said in a half-joking and half-serious tone, although this is not something worth mentioning for a priest, I have an extraordinary sensitivity to killing. I can feel that you're the best person to kill, and I can also feel that I can't kill you. Naturally, I can also feel that if you want to kill me, I won't be able to live. As he said this, when Bing Yongli raised his hands as if he was surrendering, indicating that he would not resist, he sincerely wanted to beg for mercy, so that Noah could not find an excuse to fight back. Then Noah glanced at Wen Bing Yongli. You're really not an ordinary kind of hateful guy. Really? When Bing Yongli laughed bitterly. This is the first time someone has said that to me. Yuzhu, you talk to him yourself. Noah turned around and walked out of the church without looking back. I'll wait for you outside. Yuzhu did not nod or shake her head. After Noah walked out, she opened her red lips and started to talk with Wen Bing Yongli. After walking out of the church, Noah came to the side of the gate. He leaned against the wall and rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. The people in the church were really indescribable. Jose Weijia, who had a sensing ability similar to Noah's. Wen Bing Yongli, who did not have any restrictions on killing. Although the two of them should not be able to compare to Noah in terms of strength, it also proved that the world was big, and there were all kinds of strange things, and that all kinds of people existed. At least, the memories obtained from Gaia and Alea told Noah. In this world, Noah was not the only special one. With Jose Weijia, who had a sensing ability similar to Noah's, it was possible for another existence with 3 special constitutions like Noah to appear at any time. Life forms that were even more special than fantasy breeds existed. Therefore, in this world compared to those truly special existences, Noah was not that special. Of course, from this world's point of view, Noah, who had seen Gaia and Alea, received gifts from Gaia and Alea, and might even have reached the origin, was already special enough. Then, Noah began to consider the matter of the golden wolf. Noah only had one goal in coming to this world, the world fragment. Therefore, the fantasy breed that had the world fragment in its body, and seemed to be affected by the world fragment had to be found. Although he did not know why a magician could control a fantasy breed with a world fragment in its body, the other party should still be in Sanyo City. As long as it was in Sanyo City, the matter would not be troublesome. What Noah was most afraid of was that the other party would directly escape with the golden wolf. If that happened, he would not know when he would be able to find the world fragment. In addition, the golden wolf had strength comparable to Noah. This time, there might be a tough battle to fight. Gag. Just as Noah was thinking about what to do next, the sound of the church's metal door opening and closing was heard. Yuzhu walked out of the church. Behind her, the church's door closed as if it had completed its mission. Finally, with a dong sound, it was tightly shut. Looking at Yuzhu's doll-like pretty face that lacked emotion, Noah spread his hands. Was the negotiation successful? It's not considered a negotiation. Yuzhu shook her head gently. The church doesn't want the battle between magicians to affect ordinary people. So Father Yongli will be responsible for suppressing the various effects of your battle with the fantasy breed. After saying that, Yuzhu glanced at Noah. Next, I hope you can tell me what happened. Hearing this, Noah looked at Yuzhu's expressionless face and could not help but sigh in his heart. Strictly speaking, Yuzhu had come to the church this time entirely to help Noah deal with the aftermath. After all, Noah was the one who had fought with the golden wolf. The person who had caused such a huge commotion and could possibly cause a commotion was also Noah. Although Yuju was the manager of Sanyo City's spirit vein and a magician, it was natural for her to abide by the duty of concealing the traces of magic. Thus, she took great pains to help Noah deal with the aftermath. However, help was help. Even if Noah himself did not care about the concealment of magic, he could not deny it. Here, it could be said that he owed Yuju a favor. Let's talk about it when we get back. Noah patted Yuju's little head. I owe you this time. After saying that, Noah walked forward in a carefree manner. Yuju stood in the same spot as she stared blankly at Noah's back. She raised her hand and rubbed the spot where Noah had just patted her little head. Soon after, she furrowed her brows tightly. Other than her father, there had never been a member of the opposite sex who had patted Yuju's head like Noah had. At night, in the sunroom of the manor. In other words, not only does Sanyo City have a fantasy breed that breaks the rules, but there is also a magician who seems to be able to control this fantasy breed. The worst thing is that the other party may also have their eyes on Sanyo City's spirit vein. We have to be prepared to fight with the other party, right? Ayako Aozaki looked sharply at Noah and Yuju, who were sitting at the same table as her. After a while, she held her forehead, as if she had given up, and looked hatefully at Noah. Is this your revenge on me? Ayako Aozaki was referring to her sudden outburst in the morning for no reason. I can't be bothered with the student union president's willfulness. Also, don't make it sound like I deliberately provoked this kind of enemy. I was the one who was attacked, and I was also confused, okay? Noah rolled his eyes and put the cup of black tea in his hand on the table. Although I'm still not sure if the magician who can control the fantasy breed has his eyes on Sanyo City's spirit vein. Since the other party is a magician, Sanyo City's barrier must have detected the other party's existence. I hope you can provide me with information in this regard. Provide you with information? Ayako Aozaki and Yuju froze at the same time. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. I know you are still wary of me, but I want to tell you that you are magicians, and fantasy breeds are the natural enemies of magicians. With your strength, you can't deal with a fantasy breed at all. Noah crossed his arms, and his voice echoed clearly. If you provide me with information, I will help you deal with that fantasy breed. Chapter 309. In the sunroom, Ayako Aozaki and Yuju stared at Noah in a daze, unable to react for a moment. This was because there were two key points in Noah's words. The first was that Noah had promised to deal with fantasy breeds. They were fantasy breeds, the ultimate mystery that only existed in fantasy and legends. Disregarding the magic principle of, the mystery will be defeated by an even more powerful mystery. Fantasy breeds were also extremely powerful existences. Otherwise, how could they only exist in fantasy and legends? At the very least, Ayako Aozaki and Yuju did not think that humans could deal with such monsters. Even if they were mages who could use magic to deal with them, they believed that there was a high chance that they would fail. Of course, Ayako Aozaki and Yuju did not know that the Golden Wolf's power had already surpassed that of ordinary fantasy breeds under the inexplicable influence of the world fragment. It might even exceed the category of fantasy breeds. Otherwise, they would be even more desperate. Ayako Aozaki and Yuju could not ignore the other key point in Noah's words. You're magicians? Ayako Aozaki raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? Are you saying that you're not a magician? Yuju also recalled the night when she first met Noah and fought with him. At that time, Noah also denied that he was a magician. Could it be that Noah is really not a magician? With this thought in mind, Yuju suddenly realized that apart from the magic power flowing in his body, Noah had not used magic even once. On the night of the attack by the man with the fissure, Noah had used a power that could shatter the other party's bones. However, Yuju could not be sure whether it was magic or not. As for why Noah had magic power in his body, that was even easier to explain. In this world, magicians were not the only ones who could create magic power. In fact, magic power was life force. As long as there was a way to convert it, then anyone could convert life force into magic power. It was just a matter of how much one could convert. Under such circumstances, Noah sighed. You guys really like to think that what you think is the truth. In the beginning, You took me as a foreign magician who wanted to seize the spirit vein in Sani City without permission. Now you take me as a magician without permission. I have never once said that I am a magician. Are you really not a magician? Aoko couldn't help but ask. Then what are you? Noah shrugged his shoulders and did not answer the question. Instead, he turned to look at Yuju, who was staring at him, and asked in return. Yuju, did you see the scene where I fought with the golden wolf today? Yuju couldn't help but recall the scene where it was as if a volcano had erupted. She nodded. I only exchanged a single blow with that golden wolf, but it was a draw. This should be enough to prove that I have the ability to deal with it, Noah said calmly. In addition, I also have Avalon. Do you guys still doubt that I can't deal with that golden wolf? After Noah said this, Aoko and Yuju finally remembered this matter. That was right. Even if the fantasy breed was considered a foul, the Avalon was also an extremely foul existence. Avalon was able to exclude all physical obstacles. Even in the face of magic, it would still be able to protect Noah from it. This way, even if the opponent was a fantasy breed, Noah would not have any problems. Moreover, Avalon also had a healing function. No matter how much damage Noah suffered, as long as there was enough magic power, Avalon would continuously provide healing and let Noah recover to his original state. Therefore, Avalon could be called a mobile stronghold. That was why Avalon was known as the strongest guardian. With Avalon, even if Noah could not defeat a fantasy breed, he could put himself in an invincible position. After understanding this, Aoko and Yuju looked at each other. Yuju. Aoko's expression was full of seriousness. What do you think? Yuju muttered to herself. After a while, she raised her eyes and looked at Noah. Why do you want to help us? This was Yuju's only question. Logically speaking, Noah should have no reason to help. Unless Noah had his own reasons. There's nothing to hide. Noah tapped the table in front of him with his fingers, and then sighed slightly. Didn't I say before that I stayed in Mayo City, because there was something I wanted to find? Upon hearing this, Aoko and Yuju immediately understood what was going on. Just as you guessed, the thing I want to find is on that fantasy breed. Noah curled his lips and smiled. We have the same goal, so there's a need for us to cooperate, right? You're wrong. Aoko glanced at Noah. We haven't confirmed that the other party will attack Mayo City's spirit vein. Perhaps they are like you. You have your eyes on them, and they have their eyes on you. Otherwise, why would they attack you? If the other party has no intention of attacking Mayo City's spirit vein, then there's no need for us to help you, Yuju said faintly. Similarly, there's no need to provide you with information. Oh! Noah silently curled up the corner of his mouth. In other words, you'd rather let a fantasy breed and a magician with unknown motives lurk in Mayo City and plant dangers that could explode at any time than provide me with information? Aoko and Yuju raised their eyebrows at the same time and remained silent. For you, investigating the other party's location is just a piece of cake, and there are no disadvantages. Furthermore, we can't rule out the possibility that the other party has no intention of attacking Mayo City's spirit vein, Noah said, pressing on step by step. Wouldn't it be better for me to deal with that fantasy breed and help you eliminate the hidden dangers? The sunroom immediately fell into silence. I understand. Aoko sighed slightly and said to Noah with a serious expression, we'll provide the other party's location. In exchange, if the magician behind the scenes really intends to attack Mayo City's spirit vein, you have to be responsible for dealing with that fantasy breed. No problem. Noah readily agreed. At the same time, Yuju extended her hand and extended a fair and slender finger. She gently tapped the table before her. Plop. Suddenly, the table in front of Noah, Aoko, and Yuju seemed to have assimilated into the surface of the water, and a circle of ripples appeared amidst the sound of water. A thick fog suddenly rose, and a mirror slowly emerged from the fog. On the mirror, the image of a city gradually appeared. That was Mayo City. Next, Yuju began to use Mayo City's barrier to conduct a comprehensive investigation of the entire city. The target of the investigation was naturally an individual with magic power. However, after half an hour of work, Aoko and Yuju were still unable to discover any signs of a foreign magician in Mayo City. After waiting quietly for about half an hour, Noah finally sighed softly. It seems that we can't find him. Like you, the other party has some kind of technique that can hide the existence of magic power. Yuju closed her eyes, and her quiet voice echoed. Things are a bit strange. Strange. A trace of confusion appeared on Noah's face. You still don't know, right? Aoko gritted her teeth and said this sentence. In the past month, we haven't been able to detect the existence of magic power. Other than you, there are also foreign magicians that you know about. Including this magician who can control a fantasy breed this time. There are 3 beings that we can't detect magic power this month. Yuju's expression became solemn. This is something that has never happened before, but it has happened 3 times in a row this month. Could it be that there's a problem with the barrier? 3 times. Noah scratched his cheek. Why are you so sure that it's 3 times? Noah's words made Aoko and Yuju's hearts tremble. Yes. Why are you so sure that it's 3 times? Aoko's gaze gradually became sinister. The foreign magician, and the magician who can control a fantasy breed, might be one and the same. Yuju lowered her head and fell silent. Noah cast his gaze outside the courtyard, and his eyes flickered slightly. This matter is indeed very troublesome. Chapter 310. Walala. He didn't know when it started, but the sound of rain could be heard clearly even though it was isolated by the window. Noah was woken up by the sound of the rain. He yawned as he got up from the bed and looked out the window. In the cold winter, a curtain of rain mixed with low temperatures filled the courtyard outside the mansion. It was obvious that the already very low temperature had dropped a little more. The sky was grayish-black. All the scenery outside the window was covered by the curtain of rain, silently making people's moods become heavy. Looking at such a scene, Noah, who was sitting on the bed, couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable, and his emotions gradually drifted away. Ever since they came to the conclusion that the magician controlling the fantasy breed was likely to be the same person as the foreign magician, Aoko Aozaki and Yoju's lives became busy. 3 days had passed since then. Perhaps it was because she had formed a partnership with Noah. But Aoko Aozaki finally confessed to Noah about the foreign magician. This matter actually had to start from before Noah arrived in this world. There were 2 barriers in Sanayo City, and one of them was responsible for managing the flow of mana in the spirit vein in Sanayo City. This barrier actually relied on the 5 fulcrum points carved on the ground of Sanayo City to form a typical square formation that maintained the circulation of mana in the spirit vein. Then, through artificial control of the direction of the circulation, the mana of the spirit vein was concentrated in the Kyunji mansion, which was the principle of the manor. The barrier in charge of managing the spirit vein was formed by these 5 fulcrum points. In other words, if these 5 fulcrum points disappeared, the spirit vein in Sanayo City would completely regain its freedom. At that time, Aoko Aozaki and Yuju could announce that they were no longer managers. This was also the reason why Aoko Aozaki and Yuju couldn't ignore Noah and wander around Sanayo City. Aoko Aozaki and Yuju were worried that Noah would eliminate the fulcrum points of Sanayo City's barrier one by one, thus bringing the restored spirit vein under his management and becoming the new manager of the spirit vein. This was why they chose to negotiate with Noah. The cause of the incident was the inexplicable disappearance of one of the 5 fulcrum points. At that time, Noah had yet to come to this world. Aoko Aozaki and Yuju, who had sensed that the fulcrum of Sanayo City's barrier had been removed, were caught off guard. This was because the first barrier in Sanayo City was used to detect the movement of magic power. If an external magician wanted to make a move on the fulcrum of the spiritual vein barrier, Aoko and Yuju should be able to discover the other party's whereabouts in advance. However, it was unknown what method the enemy used, but Sanayo City's barrier was completely unable to detect the enemy's movements. In order to eliminate external enemies, Aoko and Yuju began to ambush and investigate the 5 supporting points of Sanayo City's barrier. Finally, not long after, they discovered some traces of magic power being used in one of the supporting points in the forest between Sanayo Town and Sanayo Mound. And so Aoko Aoki and Yuju came up with a plan to deal with the enemy. The first was Yuju. She was responsible for monitoring the forest between Sanayo Town and Sanayo Mound. If she discovered traces of the enemy, she would immediately eliminate them. Next was Aoko Aozaki. She was responsible for monitoring the other fulcrum point. The enemy. There was also Aoko Aozaki's first opponent, after she was born as a magician. In the end, the two girls met with an accident. The forest that Yuju was monitoring was the one where Noah had concealed his identity to test Aoko Aozaki. He purposely triggered the barrier and attracted Yuju to the forest. That night, Yuju was attacked by two men with a split mouth. Although Noah had protected Yuju by accident, Yuju also discovered that the two men with a split mouth were actually man-made dolls, and not magicians from the outside world. As for Aoko Aozaki, there was no need to mention her. Before she even met an opponent, the dolls that were sent out were kicked back to the garbage collection station by Noah. They did not even have the chance to appear. After that, Noah, Aoko Aozaki, and Yuju entered into a cohabitation agreement until now. In other words, there was still no trace of the magician, who had sneaked into Sanayo City before Noah's arrival. Moreover, not only did the other party have all kinds of dolls, and send them out to harass the enemy, but it was also very likely that he was the magician who could control the fantasy breed that Noah had discovered. In addition, the other party could hide from Sanayo City's detection barrier. It was imaginable how troublesome it was. Because of this, Noah, Aoko Aozaki, and Yuju still signed an agreement. Aoko Aozaki and Yuju would continue to investigate Sanayo City, while Noah only needed to wait. Of course, it was also possible that the magician who controlled the dolls and the golden wolves were not the same person. However, both magicians had the means to hide from Sanayo City's barrier. So Aoko Aozaki and Yuju felt that the probability was not very high. Noah's appearance was already a special case. It was impossible for another one to appear. In the end, this matter was in a deadlock for the past 3 days, and there was no progress at all. No matter what, the world fragment has to be found. Noah lifted the blanket and began to put on his clothes. Today was the founding anniversary of Sanayo High School, and all the teachers and students were on holiday. Yuju, who was not studying at Sanayo High School, went to school early. Aoko Aozaki knew that it was a rest day, so she stayed up all night to work, and was now sleeping like a log. After Noah finished his breakfast, he wanted to watch TV to pass the time. But at that moment, a clear ringtone sounded from the direction of the hall. Ring, ring, ring. It was the ringtone of the phone placed in the hall. The sudden ringtone stunned Noah. After hesitating for a moment, he did not choose to pick it up. In this place, other than Aoko Aozaki and Yuju, Noah only knew his classmates from 2A. However, none of them knew that Noah was staying here. Therefore, this phone call was definitely not for Noah, so it was better for Noah not to pick it up. Ring, ring, ring. The ringtone of the phone kept echoing. After an unknown amount of time, chaotic footsteps came from the direction of the stairs, followed by Aoko Aozaki's angry roar. Noah, why didn't you pick up the phone? Noah subconsciously covered his ears, ignoring the faint anger of Aoko, who was awakened from her lack of sleep, from the direction of the living room. He continued to watch TV. After Aoko Aozaki hung up the phone, her anger seemed to have reached a new level. It was as if she deliberately increased the sound of her footsteps and walked up the stairs to the second floor. If Yuju knew that Aoko Aozaki treated her home so rudely, she would probably be furious, right? Bang! After a while, Aoko Aozaki, who had put on her uniform, pushed open the door of the living room heavily and looked at Noah with an extremely unfriendly gaze. You seem to be quite free. I don't want to be so free. Noah did not even look at Aoko Aozaki's direction and continued to watch TV. But I don't know how to use the bounded domain in Sanayo City, so I can't detect the enemy, so I can only do this. Aoko Aozaki suddenly clenched her fists, resisting the urge to punch Noah's face, and glared at Noah angrily. Thanks to you, I'll be even busier in the future. After that, Ayako Aozaki slammed the door and left. I'm going to school, you stay at home. Why are you going to school now? Noah was slightly startled, but after a while, he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly shouted outside. President, can you lend me your study room? As you wish. After leaving this sentence, Ayako Aozaki's voice completely disappeared. Noah, however, was refreshed. He turned off the TV, walked out of the living room, and walked in the direction of the second floor. This was the study room located next to Ayako Aozaki's room. Just like an ordinary study room, there were several bookshelves here, and an office desk was placed in the center of the room. Not only were there all kinds of things that belonged to Ayako Aozaki on the desk, such as instruments, but there were also piles of thick books. Click. With the sound of the door opening, Noah walked into the area that usually only belonged to Ayako Aozaki. Chirp chirp. On the window, a blue robin stood there hopping about. Noah ignored the robin, went directly to the desk, and picked up a book on the desk. The title of the book was Magic Generation. This was a book that recorded the knowledge of magic. Chapter 311. In fact, Noah was quite interested in the magic in this world. In terms of power, the magic in this world was far inferior to the magic in the world of fairy tale. After all, the magic in the world of fairy tale was basically biased towards combat and focused on power. Even the dragon slayer magic existed. As long as the magic of the sorcerers continued to improve, the power of the magic would become stronger and stronger. It could be said that there was no end to it. On the other hand, the magic in this world was more focused on research. Most of the magic was actually not suitable for combat. But it won because there was a wide variety of magic, and there were all kinds of magic with all kinds of effects. For example, barriers that could disperse crowds, suggestions that could affect one's mind, hypnosis that couldn't be guarded against, as well as tame demons, magic eyes, and other unique uses of magic. These could play a great role in certain situations, and if used to assist in battle, it would be very unexpected. As the saying goes, better safe than sorry. Noah would never complain about having more means and abilities. The books in this study were basically magic books that Ayako Aozaki had brought over from the Aozaki residence. It was said that there was a library in the mansion, and the number of books there was more than 10,000 times that of this study. It was a place that even Ayako Aozaki found troublesome. Therefore, if possible, Ayako Aozaki avoided going to the library as much as possible. Therefore, the books that were useful to Ayako Aozaki were usually in this study. Ayako Aozaki was also an apprentice magician, and a half-baked magician, who could not even use the magic passed down in her family. Because of this, most of the books in this study were about magic. For Noah, the books in Ayako Aozaki's study were just right for him. Chirp chirp chirp. The robin, who did not expect Noah to come here, and did not expect that Noah would directly flip through the books in the study, seemed to be startled, and let out a pleasant cry. Noah glanced at the robin, and then revealed a subtle smile. I was just looking for a target to try out my magic. Chirp chirp. The robin suddenly stiffened, and then flapped its wings as if it was running for its life, and flew away without looking back. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh. This robin was familiar with pearls. Not only did it have the intelligence of a human, but it was also said that it could speak human language. Although Noah had never seen it before, the robin often flew around the manor house. Over time, Noah learned of its existence. He believed that the messenger bird would report to Yuju about Noah coming to the study today to flip through the magic books, right? Shaking his head, Noah picked up the book titled Magic Generation and flipped through it. In the world of fairy tale, the bodies of the sorcerers were able to store magic from all things in the world. Once his mana was depleted, his body would automatically absorb magic spirits from the atmosphere to replenish his mana. In other words, the sorcerer was like a container that stored and absorbed mana. They could freely absorb mana from the atmosphere to replenish themselves. In this world, the source of magic power for magicians came from two sources. One was the life force from the outside world, known as the Big Source. The other was the life force they possessed, known as the small source. In this world, magicians had simulated nerves called magic circuits in their bodies. Once they were born, the quantity and quality had already been determined. It would not be increased by external factors, and was used to convert life force to form a magic conversion circuit. The more magic circuits in a magician's body, the more magic they could convert from the big source and small source. The book in Noah's hand called Magic Generation explained how to determine the number of magic circuits, which was the aptitude of a magician. According to this method, Noah helplessly found that there was not even a single magic circuit in his body. This was normal, because Noah did not need to be like the sorcerers in the world of fairy tale to absorb manna from the outside world. He also did not need to be like the magicians in this world, absorbing life force from the big source and small source to convert and generate manna. Noah's body was born to be self-sufficient in generating manna. Moreover, the quality and quantity of manna could almost be said to be unparalleled. It was precisely because of this that Makarov was so shocked when he discovered how special Noah's physique was. Therefore, Noah's physique was very special, and the ability to generate manna alone was a special characteristic that others could not imitate. With such conditions, Noah could skip a lot of steps if he wanted to learn magic. Generally, a novice magician would first have to open and activate their own magic circuits, one by one. Then, they would have to work hard to convert the life force in their greater source and lesser source to store magic power. Then, they would have to learn how to control magic power before learning magic. Noah did not need to painstakingly generate manna, and his control of manna had been practiced countless times for this purpose. He had already reached the point of perfection, and he could start learning magic directly. At that moment, Noah directly put the book in his hand on the desk, went to the front of the bookshelf, and began to flip through the books. Half an hour later, Noah took a book of mana processing, a book of magic eye manufacturing, a book of demonic eye division, and a book of magic base connection, a total of 4 thick books, and walked out of the study. Holding the 4 thick books, Noah came to the living room and sat on the sofa. First, he put the 3 books of mana processing, magic eye manufacturing, and demonic eye division on the table, then picked up magic base connection and read it. The so-called magic base connection referred to the magic patterns engraved in the world. When magicians used magic, they needed to get in touch with the magic base connection that had been engraved in the world in advance, so that the magic patterns in the magic base connection could be activated, and thus magic would be formed. In order to push the magic patterns and form magic, magicians first had to generate magic power, and the generated magic power would be sent to the magic base connection through the magic circuit, and then the magic patterns would be activated. In this way, magic would be formed. For example, the magic base connection was equivalent to a car, and gasoline was magic power, and magic was the phenomenon of car driving. Only by injecting magic power into the magic base connection could the car driving phenomenon be activated. That is, the magic would be activated, and magic would be used. In other words, if you want to use magic, you must have the magic power, the key, and the magic circuit to inject the magic power into the magic base plate. These 3 things are the magic power needed to activate the magic base plate, the key, and the magic circuit needed to inject magic power into the magic base plate. Noah furrowed his brows when he saw this. In terms of magic power, Noah did not lack at all. The key referred to the engineering and incantation of magic, which Noah could also learn from the books. But Noah himself did not have a magic circuit at all. How could he use the magic circuit as a channel to get in contact with the magic base connection engraved in the world, and then push the magic patterns to form magic? Could it be that the path of magic was not possible by himself? Whatever, let's try it first. Noah made up his mind and flipped through the magic base connection in his hand again. After confirming the method, according to the method recorded in the book, he slowly lifted the limited state of magic power, let the magic power flow like the magic circuit, and then communicated with the world. After 3 seconds, Noah opened his eyes, and his eyes were full of strangeness. I actually succeeded in one go. Without the magic circuit, it was impossible to get in contact with the magic base connection. But Noah got in contact with the magic base connection without any hindrance the first time he released the magic power. Could it be that the participation of the magic circuit is not actually needed at all? Noah did not know that only he could get in contact with the magic base connection like this. Because Noah was the favorite child who was favored by the world, he was an existence that the will of the earth and the will of the human beings regarded as family. Even if Noah did not have the magic circuit, the world would not refuse Noah's contact. So the world acted as a bridge for Noah, playing the role of the magic circuit, and took the initiative to connect Noah's magic power with the magic base connection of the whole world. This was what it meant to be blessed by the heavens. Chapter 3:12. Walala. The rain was still drizzling in the outside world. The outside of the manor was almost completely covered by the curtain of rain. The withered trees were already soaked. The tender grass that had just grown was dripping with water. The wasteland of the courtyard had absorbed a large amount of water, and it no longer looked as dry as before. Kacha! A clear sound of the door opening was heard. Noah's figure appeared at the entrance of the manor house, and came out of the manor house. If it were someone else, they would rather die than be soaked in the rain in such a cold winter, as it would definitely make their bones itch from the cold. However, Noah, who had once trained in the deep mountains and forests for 4 years, didn't care at all. He walked into the cold curtain of rain, and walked around in the courtyard. After a while, Noah stopped in front of a rock. Taking a deep breath, Noah slowly raised his hand, and pointed his palm in the direction of the rock. Collect! The moment the incantation sounded out, Noah opened his palm in the direction of the rock, and a faint blue light emerged. Wung! The magic that could be seen with the naked eye turned into a faint light that spun around Noah's hand. In a short moment, it covered Noah's entire arm. Immediately, a precise geometric pattern suddenly spun in front of Noah's palm. The edges of the pattern also spun with a few other smaller magic formations, flashing with a dazzling phosphorescence. Cast! The incantation to pull the trigger of the magic spell that had been formed in his hand also reverberated. Bang 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 bang. The faint blue geometric pattern in front of Noah's palm suddenly spun, and the phosphorescence directly converged on the smaller magic formations at the edges of the pattern. The magic also turned into fist-sized cannonballs, and in the midst of gunshots, they rubbed against the atmosphere and flashed out like flashes of light. The 4 magic bullets carried a heavy force that was enough to shatter a person's skull. Amidst the sharp sound of the air breaking, they heavily landed on the rock not far away. Bam 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 bam. Immediately, every single magic bullet produced a dull sound of impact, and a burst of light smoke on the hard rock. In the end, 4 scorch marks were left on the rock, which were quickly washed away by the rain. Looking at this scene, Noah was slightly disappointed, but he also couldn't help but laugh. Disappointingly, the power of the simple magic bullet wasn't that great. Even if it contained enough power to shatter a person's skull, it was only an extremely convenient murder weapon for humans. Those who could not help but laugh were self-deprecating after realizing their own disappointment. How long has it been since I started learning magic? This kind of power is already not bad, right? That was the truth. Magic bullet was a very simple magic trick. Rather than calling it magic, it would be better to say that it was simply processing, transforming, and strengthening the pure magic power, turning the magic power into something like a magic power cannonball, and then shooting it out. It was just like making water into a water ball. Even if the inside of the ball was soft, it would still hurt when it hit someone. For such a simple magic trick, Noah could learn it almost immediately, but if he wanted to become proficient, he still needed to practice. Magic bullet was also the first magic trick that Noah learned from mana processing. It was the same magic trick as Ayoko. The difference was that Ayoko's magic bullet basically didn't need to be activated by herself. She only needed to activate the magic bullet recorded in the magic seal, unlike Noah, who still needed to chant an incantation to activate it. Let's try again. Noah was never lacking in hard work. As a product of mana processing, if he could master the magic bullet, it would also increase his control over magic power. Therefore, Noah would not be stingy with his hard work. Bam, 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 bam. Thus, in the manor house's courtyard, the sound of the magic bullet being shot turned into echoes, constantly reverberating. Bam, 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 bam. The dull sound of the impact was also heard, causing a burst of light smoke and a burnt smell. But it was quickly washed away by the rain. Just like that, time continued to pass. Gradually, the time needed to form the magic bullet was shortened bit by bit, and Noah also became more and more proficient in the simple incantation technique, not as awkward as he was at the beginning. After an unknown amount of time, outside the courtyard's iron fence, a figure slowly appeared. Ayoko, who was holding a large red umbrella, had just pushed open the iron fence when she heard the movement in the courtyard. She suspiciously turned her head to look at the source of the sound, and when she saw Noah, who was continuously shooting the magic bullet, her expression immediately turned into one of shock. Magic? But didn't he say that he wasn't a magician? With such a question in her mind, Ayoko immediately began to seriously observe Noah. Bam, 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 bam. The bright blue flashes were mixed with the dull sounds, flickering in the air above the courtyard. Bam, 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 bam. Under the curtain of rain, the hard rock still stood there motionlessly, facing the incoming blue flashes and withstanding every heavy blow. Over time, even the rock that was not damaged in the beginning started to crack under the continuous bombardment of the magic bullet. Noah's eyes lit up, and the corner of his mouth rose. The magic in his body continuously circulated, flowing into the flickering phosphorescent arm, and pouring into the spell formation that had not yet disappeared, turning into magic bullet after magic bullet, continuously bombarding the rock. Ayoko, who was standing at the edge of the iron fence and watching all of this, already had the corner of her mouth twitching. Could it be that that guy's magic is inexhaustible? Not to mention how many magic bullet Noah had shot before Ayoko returned. From the time Ayoko returned, Noah had shot at least 100 magic bullet. Ayoko was only an apprentice magician, but no matter what, she was still the manager of the spirit vein in Sanyo City. With the support of the magic in the spirit vein, Ayoko could use about 30 magic bullet a day, and then the magic in her body would be completely exhausted. Compared to Ayoko, the guy in front of her who was wantonly shooting magic bullet, with a face full of unsatisfied and restless expression, was simply a monster. Ayoko felt that if she continued to watch like this, perhaps her small sense of superiority in magic would be completely destroyed. At that moment, Ayoko unhappily opened her mouth. "What are you doing here?" Noah, who was highly concentrated, did not seem to notice Ayoko's approach. When he heard Ayoko's voice, he was slightly startled and reflexively turned his head, looking behind him. When he clearly saw the owner of the voice, he raised his eyebrows. "You're back." "Yes." Ayoko still had a sullen expression, looking very gloomily at Noah. "What are you doing here?" "It's as you see." Noah retracted his mana without any hesitation, causing the tactical magic array that was floating in the air like a turret to dissipate. "I'm learning magic." "Learning?" Ayoko's expression became interesting, and her tone was full of uncertainty. "What you mean is, you just learned the magic bullet?" "Yes." Noah nodded and said doubtfully. "Is there a problem?" Ayoko was speechless. With Ayoko's personality, how could she admit that Noah's newly learned magic was comparable to hers? Noah was not a wise sage, so naturally, he could not always guess Ayoko's thoughts. Seeing Ayoko's gloomy expression, he somewhat curiously asked, "What's wrong? Did something good happen in school?" As soon as this sentence came out, Ayoko's sullen expression turned completely gloomy. "Hey Noah-san." Ayoko suddenly said such a sentence. "How do people communicate with bears?" "That's a very deep question." Noah was stunned. "Could it be that you met a bear?" "No." Ayoko sighed faintly, and then said bitterly, "But I really hope that I met a bear. At least if I met a bear, I could go up and fight with it. I don't have to worry about whether I can fight or not. After saying this, Ayoko coldly snorted and walked into the mansion. Noah's mouth twitched. What the hell is going on? Chapter 313. The sunlight room at night was just as bright as it was during the day. The bright light illuminated the room, which was 1/3 of the room made of glass. At the dining table, a man and 2 women were once again eating dinner. Noah picked up strands of noodles with his fork, rolled them up, and put them into his mouth. His other hand was holding the book Demonic Servant Division, and he was reading it seriously. On the other side, Yuju, who was said to have eaten outside, was also holding a book in her hand. However, her mind was obviously not on the book. Sometimes she would look at Noah, who was reading seriously, and sometimes she would look at Ayoko. Her dark eyes were filled with confusion. She wondered why Noah was reading such a book. She also wondered why Ayoko was in such a bad mood. At this time, Ayoko was seriously dissatisfied because she couldn't order takeout and had to cook. She ate the food she made as if nothing had happened, and didn't say a word. Originally, Ayoko and Yuju didn't have much in common with each other except for magic. Before Noah lived in the mansion, Ayoko Aozaki and Yuju would often be like this. Even if they sat together, they wouldn't say a word for a long time. They were already used to each other's silence. However, today's silence was a bit different. Ayoko didn't seem to have anything strange on the surface, but the more she acted like she didn't care, the more emotional she was. Yuju, who had lived with Ayoko for about 2 years, could easily see that Ayoko was sulking. Moreover, she didn't seem to be angry because she couldn't order takeout. Yuju wasn't a person who cared about other people's feelings. But this time, maybe because there was a third party around, Yuju asked Noah a question, which she rarely did. Ayoko, what's wrong? Who knows? Noah was still looking at his book, rolling his noodles, and speaking in an indifferent tone. I heard that you met an opponent, even more difficult to deal with than a bear. I just don't know who it is. Can we not talk about this? Ayoko said gloomily. I already feel like I'm very unlucky. Really? Yuju's gaze lingered on Ayoko for a moment before she replied, as if it had nothing to do with her. I just hope you don't affect the lives here. The side here was not referring to the life in the mansion, but the life of a magician. Although he didn't know what happened to Ayoko, it seemed to be something that happened when she was active in Sano City as an ordinary person. Magicians were a special group that lived in seclusion in modern times. It could not be said that magicians did not interact with ordinary people, but in order to maintain the concealment principle of magic, magicians would not get too close to ordinary people. After all, once he became intimate with someone, it would increase the chances of his secret being exposed. Yuju didn't object to Ayoko going to an ordinary high school, but she seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with Ayoko's emphasis on the life of an ordinary person. Ayoko also understood Yuju's meaning, and the anger in her heart suddenly disappeared, and she seemed to have calmed down. I know what you mean. Don't worry, I'll coordinate the lives of both sides. I just lost my cool today because I met that transfer student. Noah finally raised his head from the book in his hand and looked at Ayoko in surprise. Transfer student? You mean our school? I don't want to admit it, but unfortunately, our school seems to have been targeted by all kinds of strange transfer students this month. It's already incredible to have one, and now there's another one. It's simply a miracle. Ayoko said this sentence as if she was referring to something. The most incredible thing is that this transfer student came from the mountains. He didn't even have any contact with life with electricity before, and he didn't know any common sense in the city. When such a person transferred to our school, even the teachers couldn't do anything about it. I see. Noah smiled thoughtfully. In the end, the teachers couldn't do anything about it, and could only let you, the student council president, deal with this wild child. You tortured our iron and steel student council president until he lost his temper, right? Can you imagine how tiring it is to introduce the school and the classroom to a guy who doesn't even walk through the front door and only chooses to crawl through the windows? Ayoko said tiredly. It's already so tiring on the first day. I can't imagine how much trouble that guy will cause in the school. In other words, the student council will become a nanny team for a period of time, specifically looking after that transfer student, right? Noah couldn't help but laugh. This really makes me interested. If I have time, I'll go and meet this transfer student who came from the mountains. Saying such a sentence, Noah once again looked at the book in his hand. It was obvious that he didn't want to talk about the transfer student anymore. Why are you suddenly interested in magic? This time, it was Aoko who was curious, glancing at the book in Noah's hand. This is a book about tamed monsters, right? Don't tell me you want to make a tamed monster? Hearing this, Yuju slightly raised her eyes, as if she was also interested in this topic. I took this from your study. Noah didn't raise his head, reaching out his hand and flipping through the pages. If there's a chance, I'll try to make one. If you really want to make a tamed monster, there's an expert here. Aoko very casually said such a sentence. Don't forget, Yuju is the best at making all kinds of tamed monsters. Noah immediately looked at Yuju, who was also looking at him. When their eyes met, he also remembered Yuju's uniqueness. This was what Aoko, who was busy looking for signs of a foreign magician, casually told Noah when he accidentally mentioned Yuju's magic. According to Aoko, Yuju was different from other magicians. She was a pureblood witch, and the magic she used was not in the same system as other magic. It was very unique, and only pureblood witches could use the magic system. Fairy tale monster Ploi Kickshaw. This was the general name of Yuju's tamed monsters. Yuju's magic was actually a fairy tale-themed curse and medicine, and the main fighting force was made up of the fairy tale monster, Ploi Kickshaw. Their prototypes came from the world of fairy tales. They were special cases created based on fairy tales. Unlike other tamed monsters, Yuju's fairy tale monster, Ploi Kickshaw, was quite powerful. Because they were born from fairy tales, the only thing that was useful to them was the same mysterious magic. Ordinary modern weapons couldn't do anything to them. Moreover, they all existed in their respective fairy tales. If you want to defeat them, you have to find their weaknesses in the fairy tales. Because of this, Yuju basically used the fairy tale monster, Ploi Kickshaw, as a fighting method. As for Yuju herself, her fighting strength was very low, and it was possible that even Aoko could defeat Yuju. However, if Yuju was given the opportunity to use her tamed monsters, then Yuju's fighting strength would be at the top of all magicians. Noah had already seen Yuju's special tamed monsters many times. For example, Diddle Diddle. After sinking into the ground, it would strengthen Yuju's magic in the middle of the night. It was the Glass Cat Bell. For example, Gap Twins. When Yuju used them to deal with Noah, they were the two verbose pigs. For example, 6 Song Chocolate, 24 gray starlings that were good at reconnaissance. They were mainly responsible for the surveillance of Sanyo City. Their bodies were chocolate, and if a magician ate it directly, it would have a healing effect. Noah had seen this flock of birds many times. Another example was Thames Troll, which was the personification of London Bridge. It was one of Yuju's strongest tamed monsters, and the giant that Yuju used in the forest was the Thames Troll. Therefore, when it came to how to create and use tamed monsters, Yuju was definitely an expert among experts. Because of this, Noah asked Yuju, "Yuju, what kind of tamed monsters do you think I should create?" Chapter 314. Noah originally didn't have high expectations of asking Yuju. After all, Yuju was not only reticent, but also because she was a pure-blooded witch, she abnormally rejected humans and outsiders. The words she spoke to Noah in the manor house usually didn't exceed 5 sentences in a day. In addition, Noah, an outsider, lived in Yuju's most precious manor house because of his own interests. If Yuju was pleasant to Noah, that would be really strange. Therefore, Noah was just trying to ask. Who knew? After Yuju pondered for a while, she responded to Noah. "What kind of familiar do you want to make?" Noah looked at Yuju with some surprise, as if he didn't quite believe that Yuju really intended to ask him about the matter of making a familiar. This made Yuju frown and coldly look at Noah. "If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Noah finally reacted, put the book in his hand on the table, and seriously said to Yuju, "This book has recorded many types of familiar, so I can't make up my mind." The original intention of magicians to make familiar was to give all the trivial things, such as daily life, the collection of research materials, and so on, to an absolutely obedient assistant to do, so that the magician could concentrate on the research of magic. The simplest way to make a familiar was to make a part of the magician's body, such as hair, skin, and so on, and then make it into a familiar, or to transform other dead creatures, such as cats, dogs, and so on, into a familiar. In this way, the familiar created by magicians would be given a part of the magician's abilities. The way to make a familiar was something that every magician knew. The only question was what type of familiar to make. For example, if you want a familiar to manage daily life, then you have to give the familiar part of the abilities to focus on wisdom and endurance. For example, if you want a familiar to collect research materials, then you have to give the familiar part of the abilities to focus on detection and identification. If you want a familiar to assist in battle, then there are more things to consider. This was also the main reason why Noah couldn't make up his mind. To be honest, if possible, Noah would of course want to be like Yuju and create a familiar that was much stronger than himself, but this was somewhat unrealistic. A familiar with pearls was a special product that could only be created by a witch. Furthermore, some of the powerful tamed demons in Yuju's hands were not made by Yuju himself. They were made by Yuju's mother, or even by the witch before Yuju's mother. Although a familiar would not be stronger than its master, that was only relative. Just like Yuju, the tamed demons she created were not as strong as herself, but Yuju's mother must have been much stronger than Yuju. Even if the tamed demons she created were weaker than herself, they would still be stronger than Yuju. Not to mention the tamed demons that were passed down from the ancient witch to the present day. This kind of tamed demon, that was created by the previous master, and passed to another master, to have a stronger power than the current master was not a strange thing. Moreover, if the target of the tamed demon originally had a strong power, then it was possible that the tamed demon was stronger than the master. Just like Noah, if he made a creature stronger than himself into a tamed demon, then the tamed demon's power would naturally be stronger than Noah's. Noah wanted to learn the method of creating a tamed demon because of this. Noah's idea was to first learn this method, so that when he obtained some powerful creatures' corpses in the future, he could directly make them into tamed demons, which would definitely be of great help to him. Therefore, although a lot of magic was not suitable for battle, but there were all kinds of strange effects. If used well, the effect would be absolutely unimaginable. You want to create a tamed demon that is stronger than yourself, right? Yuju seemed to have seen through Noah's idea, but still gave such a sentence. "I don't recommend you do that." Noah suddenly froze. It is very easy to create a tamed monster, but that also requires the magical power to be divided into the tamed monster's body. Moreover, the more powerful the tamed monster is, the more magical power it needs to be divided. Yuju's words woke everyone up from their dreams. If you intend to create a tamed demon that is stronger than yourself, then you must divide most of the magic power to the tamed demon, which will greatly reduce your level, so I don't recommend you to do that. Being said so by Yuju, Noah woke up. That's right. The method of creating a tamed demon was indeed very easy. But does this mean that magicians can create tamed demons at will? Of course, that was impossible. Otherwise, even if the tamed demon was weak, magicians could still create a large number of tamed demons to form an army of tamed demons to fight against the enemy, winning with numbers. In that case, who could say that the tamed demon was weaker than the master? In that case, would magicians still need to fight by themselves? Wouldn't it be fine to just leave it all to the tamed demon? The reason why they didn't do that was because creating a tamed demon required the magic power to be divided. This part of the magic power was equivalent to being lost forever, and there was no possibility of it being used by the magician himself. If it was to create a weak tamed demon, then the magic power that was divided was not much, and the level of the magician would not decrease by much. But if it was to create a strong tamed demon, then the level of the magician would be greatly reduced. For example, Noah, if he really lost a part of his magic power permanently, then his strength would also decrease. Unless the tamed demon was really strong. Otherwise, magicians generally would not make such a choice. So Yuju, are you suggesting that I don't wait until there is a strong creature's body to create a tamed demon? Noah nodded in relief. In that case, what kind of tamed demon is best to create? It depends on where you are lacking. Yuju said so. The tamed demon that you create should be able to make up for some of your own weaknesses. Then it would be worth creating. Yuju's words were very few, but every sentence woke Noah up. It was indeed so. Even if the tamed demon was weaker than the magician himself, if he could make up for his own weaknesses, then the effect of the tamed demon in battle would simply be extraordinary. Yuju was indeed a witch who was good at tamed demons, making Noah's understanding of magic enter a new level. No matter how weak the magic was, as long as it could be used, then it would be strong. What kind of cat was the best? It was not a cat with a strong body, nor was it a cat with a gorgeous appearance, but a cat that could catch mice. The expression in Noah's eyes became brighter and brighter. After Yuju's reminder, Noah recalled the magic that he accidentally saw in the morning. That magic, at the beginning, was filtered out by Noah. But now that he thought about it, if that magic was learned, it would definitely make Noah's strength rise to another level. Ha 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 ha. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but laugh out loud, stood up, and ran outside while shouting loudly. Thank you, Yuju. I love you to death. Saying such a sentence, Noah ran into the living room and disappeared in front of the living room's door. Ayoko and Yuju had long been stunned by Noah's last sentence. After a long while, Ayoko's eyes appeared like a kitten's mischievous light. With a sweet smile, she looked at Yuju. Congratulations, Yuju. Yuju didn't even look at Ayoko, slightly lowered her head, raised the book in her hand, and looked at it expressionlessly, as if nothing had happened. Only Ayoko knew that for her to use the book to cover nearly half of her face, needless to say, Yuju must be shy. Obviously, Noah's words that burst out in joy were not harmless. On the other side, Noah went directly to the second floor, quickly walked to Ayoko's study, opened the door, and went to the bookshelf that was neatly arranged with magic books, and quickly flipped through them. At a certain moment, Noah stopped the movement of his hands, the corner of his mouth slowly raised, and he pulled out a book from the bookshelf. The title of the book, Enhance. This was the magic book that Noah directly ignored in the morning, but now he was pleasantly surprised. Sure enough, no matter how small, insignificant, and weak, existence is the absolute truth, and existence has value. After that, Noah flipped through the book in his hand, immersing himself in the world of the book. Chapter 3:15. The next day, Sunny City's sky finally welcomed light once again. It was not as gloomy as yesterday, and it was no longer raining that made people feel depressed. Walking on the asphalt road to Mayo High School, Noah held a book in his hand and kept flipping through it. Looking at his appearance, he had long been immersed in the world of books. Next to Noah, Ayoko Aozaki was also there. Although Noah and Ayoko lived together and went to the same high school, they did not agree to go to school together. In the end, the two lived together because of interests. They could not even be called friends. They could only be called business partners. Naturally, their relationship was not good enough for them to go to school together. Today, they went to school together because Noah and Ayoko happened to go out together at the same time. Since the destination was the same, and the journey was the same, it was normal for the two of them to travel together. Because there was no need to deliberately separate, right? Ayoko Aochi was not the kind of person who would be hesitant about trivial matters. Noah would not stick to this kind of small matter, so he went with the flow. This kind of relationship where they went to school together, but did not even speak a word to each other. If it was an ordinary person, it would be awkward to stay together, and they would want to run away. Ayoko, on the other hand, seemed to be no different from usual. Her expression was still as calm as ever. After all, Yuju was a taciturn person. Ayoko Aochi had long been used to the people around her being silent. As for Noah, his mind was not on the outside at all. Instead, it was on the book in his hand. Gradually, more and more students appeared on the road to Mayo High School. When these students saw Noah and Ayoko walking together, many of them looked at each other and started to talk. Isn't that the student president? That's the rumored transfer student, right? Why are they walking together? I heard that the student president has been inviting the transfer student on a date recently. Did they end up together? Why did I hear that the transfer student has been pestering the student president? Impossible, that's impossible. That's the student president. Don't tell me you don't know the consequences of pestering her. It seems that the student council president is wooing a transfer student. Yes, that's right. Ayoko's eyes began to twitch as she listened to the discussions coming from all directions. Her eyes suddenly became incomparably ferocious as she fiercely swept her gaze around, causing the surrounding students to turn pale with fright. They shut their mouths and instantly scattered like birds and beasts. Ayoko clutched her head in pain, but when she saw Noah, who was still calmly reading his book, her brows furrowed. Why are you suddenly interested in magic? Isn't it good to have one more method? Noah immediately answered Ayoko's question. Although he didn't raise his head, it proved that he had been paying attention to his surroundings and wasn't really paying attention to the book. Moreover, there are some magic tricks that would be of great help to me. Is that so? Ayoko was still frowning. But don't forget, magic is ineffective against fantasy breeds. Who told you that my opponent must be a fantasy breed? Noah's voice became a half-smile. Don't tell me you think that I'm going to live in seclusion in the mountains and never fight again after fighting with that fantasy breed? With that said, Noah's voice changed from a half-smile to a meaningful one. Besides, it's not like all magic spells can't be used in a battle with fantasy breeds. Ayoko was startled when she heard this. Just as she was about to continue pursuing, she recalled that this wasn't something she could ask in her current position. Her brows slowly relaxed as she casually replied. No matter what, since you've learned magic, you're considered a magician. You know the rules of magicians, so in such a conspicuous place, you'd better put away the magic book in your hand. It's just a book. Don't be so surprised, Noah retorted bluntly. Even if someone sees the book in my hand, they'll most likely think that it's a novel. What you're worried about won't happen, student president. Ayoko raised her eyebrows and didn't say anything. If there was really a possibility of the magic being exposed, Ayoko wouldn't have waited until now to remind Noah. Besides, even if the magic was exposed, it would be Noah who exposed it. It would be Noah's business who should be silenced. And it had nothing to do with Ayoko. If it was Ariho, she might have interfered because of the strict style of a magician. But Ayoko was just an apprentice magician, and she had only been an apprentice magician for less than 2 years. As long as the result was not bad, Ayoko would not interfere. Ayoko? At this moment, an honest and calm voice came from behind Noah and Ayoko Aoyagi. It was a slightly contradictory voice. Ayoko's delicate body slightly stiffened when she heard this voice. Her expression that had just returned to normal instantly became fierce and sullen. It was as if she had met the god of pestilence. She secretly sighed at her own bad luck. Noah noticed that Ayoko's expression was a little stiff, so he turned around in confusion and looked behind him. What entered Noah's eyes was a student wearing a boy's uniform. His age was similar to Noah and Ayoko, but his appearance was somewhat ordinary. His head was slightly messy, and his body was slightly thinner than the average person. No matter how you looked at him, you couldn't see anything special about him. However, such a boy made Ayoko's body stiffen, and at the same time, it also made Noah squint his eyes. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Because of his boundless and powerful magic, almost 70% of Noah's strength was in the aspect of magic. The remaining 30%, except for Blaze, was all in the aspect of his body and combat awareness. Noah, who had tempered his strength thousands of times, could easily see that this ordinary boy in front of him was not ordinary. His seemingly low presence was actually just a layer of natural camouflage. Even though the other party was wearing a uniform and looked thin, as a combat expert, Noah instantly discovered that the body hidden under the other party's clothes was also a body that had been tempered thousands of times. There was not a trace of excess standing posture. Hidden under his confused eyes, there was a bright light, the trace of a powerful aura that was covered by the low presence, and the unnatural feeling of a relaxed body that was ready to tense up at any time. This ordinary-looking boy in front of him was definitely a combat expert like Noah, possessing good combat skills and combat awareness. All of a sudden, Noah's interest was piqued. In contrast to Noah, Aoko's face was full of discomfort, as if she had swallowed a fly. But soon, Aoko realized that her emotions were inexplicably affected. Aoko originally did not like the feeling of her emotions being disturbed. Therefore, Aoko calmed down, brushed her waist-length hair, and indifferently spoke, as if she was talking to an ordinary classmate. "Hello, Jingxi classmate." Jingxi? Noah was startled, and then immediately remembered. This surname was not unfamiliar to Noah, because in the past few days, the student council headed by Aoko had been dealing with people with this surname every day. Jingxi Kusajikuro. Not long ago, Aoko had a headache, and now it was the entire student council that had a headache. Everyone knew that this was the transfer student from the mountains. He is the transfer student. Noah looked at Jingxi Kusajikuro, and just happened to meet Jingxi Kusajikuro's gaze. If it was a normal person, at this time, when seeing Noah and Aoko together, they would either worry about whether they would disturb the two, or even if they did not care, they would first introduce themselves to the person they did not know. However, Jingxi Kusajikuro did not have this intention at all. After meeting Noah's gaze, he simply looked away. It was not that this person was impolite, but that this person did not know that this was the time to be polite. That was the feeling. Aoko, who did not know Noah's feeling, directly asked after greeting him, "Do you have something to do today?" Jingxi Kusajikuro's gaze became blank. "I do have a lot of things to do. Do you want to help?" Aoko's mouth twitched, and even Noah could not help but laugh. This person, unexpectedly, is a difficult person to deal with. Chapter 316. Noah, who was quietly observing Aoko and Shizuka Kusajiro, gradually found that this wild child called Shizuka Kusajiro really didn't know anything. He knew that there were many differences between the city and the mountains, but he didn't know what these differences meant. He knew that he had to follow the rules of the city, such as waiting for the green light to cross the road, buying things to pay, but he didn't know why these rules existed. Moreover, Shizuka Kusajiro wasn't stupid, but his thinking couldn't keep up with the speed of others. To put it simply, Shizuka Kusajiro focused more on using his body than his brain. It was that simple. Just like Naz, Shizuka Kusajiro basically used his body to remember things, not his brain. In other words, this was a person who focused more on experience than knowledge. If he understood this point, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with Shizuka Kusajiro. For example, writing. As long as he actually wrote it to Shizuka Kusajiro, it would be more effective than telling him stroke by stroke. This person simply didn't know how to beat around the bush. This made Aoko put on an unhappy expression in front of Shizuka Kusajiro, but Shizuka Kusajiro was still able to respond with a smile, making Aoko's patience gradually wear out. Seeing that Aoko seemed to be faintly holding back her anger, Noah shrugged and suddenly spoke. "Shizuka classmate, have you practiced martial arts before?" When these words came out, not only Aoko was stunned, even Shizuka Kusajiro was stunned and looked at Noah. Without asking who Noah was, and without the intention to introduce himself, Shizuka Kusajiro asked with a puzzled face. "Martial arts. It's fighting skills," Noah patiently explained. "You should understand, right?" Shizuka Kusajiro was a little surprised, but in the blink of an eye, he looked at Noah with surprise. "How do you know?" Aoko suddenly understood that Noah's words were true, and the way she looked at Shizuka Kusajiro instantly changed. If in the past, Aoko looked at Shizuka Kusajiro like she was looking at a walking trouble, then she was looking at an opponent now. After appearing in Sanyo City, Noah had transferred to Sanyo High School and caught Aoko off guard. Ayoko had reason to be suspicious now. She suspected that Shizuka Kusajuro was the foreign magician who had been hiding in Sanyo. Only Noah could see that Shizuka Kusajuro's a foreign magician. Perhaps the traces and the aura could be hidden. But once it was exposed, a person's, no matter how hard they couldn't hide it, it was impossible to hide it. That day, Noah had already remembered the aura of the magician who had controlled the fantasy breed behind the scenes. Shizuka Kusajuro didn't have that person naturally. The two of them were completely different people. After a Juro who silently a Juro who? S and a hoot no. After a while. In Tian's tea, the same kind of people? Shizuka Kusajuro was even more puzzled. With his brain, he couldn't understand the meaning behind Noah's words. Let's put it this way. Noah smiled helplessly. I'm the same as you. To hone my skills, I once lived in the mountains. Shizuka Kusajuro was shocked. Then, he looked at Noah with surprise as if he had finally found a companion. Ayoko's beautiful eyes widened. She was finally sure. No wonder the two people in front of her brought her all kinds of troubles. They were the same kind of people. Hey Shizuka. Noah's eyes flashed with a delicate expression. Why don't we compete? Why? The surprise on Shizuka Kusajuro's face turned into doubt. You're not a bear. Well, Noah knew it would be troublesome to explain to this wild child in front of him. So he simply said so. Just take it as a greeting. Greeting? This time, Shizuka Kusajuro's expression was full of confusion and surprise. Is this how the people in the city greet each other? This is different from what I know. This also varies from person to person, right? Noah said so. Isn't there a saying no discord, no concord? Hearing this, Shizuka Kusajuro was relieved. I've seen this saying before. It's true. Hearing this, Ayoko could no longer ignore it. Fighting is equivalent to greeting? If this transfer student from the mountains really formed such a concept, then in the future, when he greets others in school, he won't just come up with a punch, right? Then wouldn't the student council become Shizuka Kusajuro's support group? Don't give me any more trouble. You guys. Ayoko squeezed in between Noah and Shizuka Kusajuro and roared at Noah's direction. Don't tell me you don't have enough trouble now. A roar directly stunned Shizuka Kusajuro, who wasn't very smart. Ignoring the stunned Shizuka Kusajuro, Ayoko aggressively said to Shizuka Kusajuro, don't take this guy's words seriously, unless you don't want to live in this city. Do you understand? It was unknown whether Shizuka Kusajuro understood Ayoko's meaning, but he very straightforwardly nodded and said such a sentence. Since Ayoko said it, then it should be true. Looking at Shizuka Kusajuro, who showed a sincere smile, as if Ayoko treated him so well. Even Ayoko was embarrassed and turned her face away. At the same time, it also amused Noah. This Shizuka Kusajuro was really interesting. In the following period of time, Noah basically ignored the boring lullaby class. Every day, he would bring a magic book from Ayoko's study room and absorb all the magic knowledge and theory like a sponge. Noah originally had an extraordinary memory and understanding ability. In the 1 year in the world of the Black Bullet, Noah relied on his extraordinary memory and understanding ability to learn all the languages in the world. He also conveniently finished all the courses up to the university level. He even had time to learn hacking and piano. It was not hard to imagine how high Noah's memory and understanding ability were. Therefore, in a week's time, Noah memorized all the magic books in Ayoko's study room. Of course, memorizing was one thing, but wanting to use the magic recorded in the books was another matter. Magic was not something that could be used just by memorizing. The most important thing was to learn and practice. And in this 1 week's time, Noah only learned 3 magic tricks. One was Magic Bullet. The other was Strengthen. The other was Runa. Among them, Magic Bullet, needless to say, it was the first magic trick that Noah learned. Although its power was not great, it was still relatively speaking. High power, high damage Magic Bullet also existed. Of course, at that level, instead of calling it Magic Bullet, it was better to call it Magic Missile or Magic Cannon. As for Strengthen and Runa, They were the magic that Noah paid special attention to, and he was very serious in learning them. Compared to Magic Bullet, these two magic tricks were the most obvious in increasing Noah's strength. The so-called strengthen magic was the same as its name. It was a magic trick that focused on strengthening various things. To be more precise, it should be said that it was strengthening. If it was used on a knife, it could make the knife sharper. If it was used on a stone, it could make the stone harder. If it was used on a light bulb, it could make the light bulb brighter. If it was used on a fan, it could make the wind cooler. In this way, if it was used on one's fists would become heavier. If it was used on one's feet, one's speed and endurance would also increase. If it was used on one's body's defense would increase significantly. For Noah, this magic trick was extremely useful. As long as a large amount of magic was used, Noah's strength in all aspects would increase in a straight line. Therefore, although Noah did not pay attention to it at first, after being reminded by Yuju, he immediately thought of it. As for Runa, if it was used well, it could also be a super powerful magic trick. Therefore, regarding strengthen and Runa, Noah attached great importance to it, and whenever he had time, he would immerse himself in learning these two magic tricks. And on this night a week later, when Noah and Aoko Ouchi returned to the mansion after school, Yuju, who came down from upstairs, directly gave these words. "Get ready, we have work to do tonight." You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.